Chapter 2155. Toka is right this time. This woman is a vixen. A vixen with a belly full of evil tricks. She's always thinking of ways to frame me. Dustless agreed with Toka's point of view. Toka Kurumi also felt helpless at times. If Itsuka Kotori and the others were here, it would be inevitable for them to scold Dustless. However, it was worth mentioning that Rain Murasame tested her favorability with Toka Kurumi. Toka Kurumi's favorability towards Dustless was no longer 0. It had risen to 30%. Although it was still pitifully low, it was much better than 0. Shameless vixen, don't be too proud. Toka Kurumi stared at Toka Kurumi. Although she was stubborn, her eyes were shining. She seemed to be very tempted by Toka Kurumi's suggestion. Seriously, this little girl is too naive. She fell for my tricks so easily. I was just saying it casually. I didn't expect her to really fall for me. Where did Dustless get his charm from? How could he make Toka Kurumi fall for him? God is unfair. Toka Kurumi couldn't help but mumble. She stared at Dustless deeply and then glanced at Toka Kurumi. She was secretly unhappy. In fact, Dustless did not do anything to Toka Kurumi. At least, that was what Toka Kurumi thought. However, there was a saying that one should never guess a girl's thoughts. Unknowingly, Toka Kurumi was already dead set on Dustless. Is she really going to imitate me? This little girl always goes against me. I'm just purposely attacking her. If she really imitates me, wouldn't that be letting Dustless take advantage of her? Tokasaki Kurumi had a strange expression on her face as she stared at the Yato god Toka, whose eyes were filled with desire. She couldn't help but feel a little regretful. She wanted to trap Dustless on purpose. It would be best if Yato Dustless became the target of everyone's criticism. She wanted to wash away the humiliation that Dustless brought to her. But what if Yato god Toka decided to seduce Dustless? Wouldn't that be a huge loss? After all, Shizaki Kurumi's plan was to get all the elves to find trouble with Dustless. Even if he was unhappy, he wouldn't do anything to the elves. But if Toka really wanted to seduce Dustless, it would be unavoidable for Dustless to get intimate with him. However, Tokasaki Kurumi did not expect Toka to be so naive. Tokasaki Kurumi was simply playing with fire. Tokasaki Kurumi did not expect Toka to be so naive. Cough cough cough. Thinking of this, Tokasaki Kurumi coughed twice in an attempt to stop Yato god Toka. But just as she was about to speak, Yato god Toka left in a huff. Humph. Don't think that you're the only one who knows how to flirt. If you know it, so do I. In fact, I can do it better than you. Leaving these words behind, Yuso Toka disappeared without a trace, leaving behind Tokasaki Kurumi, who could only stare blankly. TSK serves you right. Looking at the stunned Tokasaki Kurumi, Dustless laughed at her misfortune. This woman who was full of evil tricks always went against him. She even tricked Dustless for no reason. Now, she was caught in her own trap. This is the most tragic thing in the world. Dustless suddenly laughed. What do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about. Furrowing her brows, Tokasaki Kurumi asked with an unnatural expression. Sometimes, plans always run counter to reality. She had to pretend that she did not know. Otherwise, if Dustless found out that she did not get her revenge and instead benefited Dustless, wouldn't she become a laughingstock? You don't know? Or are you pretending to be dumb? Dustless snorted in disdain and said with a smile, someone lifted a rock to smash someone else's foot. How vicious. However, as the saying goes, the net of heaven grinds slowly but surely. In the end, someone smashed her own foot. Don't you think this kind of person is ridiculous, Miss Tokasaki Kurumi? You. Tokasaki Kurumi was furious. Don't be too happy. Yato god Toka is a conservative girl. She might just be joking. Who knows? Dustless shrugged and looked at Tokasaki Kurumi with a smile. Anyway, thanks to you, I might be able to have a good eye in the future. After all, Toka's figure is not bad. She's very pleasing to the eye. Hee hee, thank you very much. You're so cooperative in picking up girls. I'm embarrassed to have you as a servant. Dustless winked at Tokasaki Kurumi with a grateful expression. PFFF. Tokasaki Kurumi almost vomited blood. Her face was gloomy. She glared at Dustless and left in anger. It seemed like she went to Toka's room. She only wanted to provoke Yato God Toka and attack Dustless. If Yato God Toka really seduced Dustless because of her, then this brat would be too easy. You think you can fight with me? Little girl, you don't have any self-awareness. You're overestimating yourself. Seeing Tokasaki Kurumi leave in a huff, Dustless smiled and returned to his room to sleep. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 tips plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2156. Naturally, Tokasaki Kurumi wanted to cry. It was exactly what she had imagined. After following Tokasaki to her bedroom, she found that Tokasaki was trying on some see-through pajamas. The ones that looked more seductive were the ones that Tokasaki Kurumi was trying on. Damn it! After trying for so long, I've already worn out my mouth. In the end, it was Dustless who took advantage of it. I won't allow this to happen. Tokasaki Kurumi stomped her feet. Tokasaki Kurumi didn't know whether to laugh or cry when she saw Tokasaki Kurumi talking about her while changing her pajamas. She was just trying to provoke Tokasaki Kurumi, but she didn't expect the naive Tokasaki Kurumi to believe her. She even swore that she would defeat her. This pure elf's thinking is too simple, even childish. She really can't be judged with common sense. Tokasaki Kurumi sighed in regret. Actually, it wasn't just Tokasaki Kurumi who was depressed. Everyone else was depressed as well. DEM Corporation. The highest floor of a skyscraper that pierced through the clouds was extremely luxurious. The expensive decorations in the outside world were just ordinary things here. This was the office of Isaac Ray Pelham Westcott. As one of the higher-ups and even the controller of DEM, it was normal for him to receive such treatment. At this moment, he was in a dilemma. There was no other reason other than the blonde girl in front of him. Where is she? Did you say that you failed? You've disappointed me, Irene. Westcott looked at the injured Irene with dissatisfaction in his eyes. There was even a bone-piercing chill in the depths of his eyes. It was fine that he couldn't take care of Dustless, but he couldn't even bring Tokasaki Kurumi back. How could Westcott not be angry? After all, the elves were his prey. No. Irene shook her head. Wrapped in bandages, Irene shook her head. Her attitude was colder and harsher than before. Even though a cold glint flashed past Westcott's eyes, she caught it clearly. After all, she wasn't an ordinary person. Oh, so you've succeeded? Where is she? Hearing this, Westcott's lifeless eyes suddenly shot out a cold light. This? Irene sneered in her heart, but her expression didn't change. She said, I was seriously injured. That Dustless was too strong. I only caught Princess, but because my injuries were too serious, I didn't bring her back. I just hid Princess in an abandoned warehouse near the battle. Not bad. You've done well. It's been hard on you, Irene. Westcott smiled and nodded, his expression changing faster than one could flip a book. Bring me to see the princess. Finally getting a test subject, Westcott was very excited. He couldn't wait to look at Irene, his hopeful eyes clearly saying, Hurry up and bring me to see the Night Blade God Toka. Understood. Irene nodded solemnly, but the corners of her mouth raised into an imperceptible cold arc. He had painstakingly tricked Westcott out of the DEM company in order to find a suitable environment to hunt Westcott. After all, killing Westcott in the DEM company would cause a lot of trouble. Right here. Are you sure you didn't bring it to the wrong place? In the abandoned warehouse, Westcott frowned. At this moment, there was only him and Irene, there was no one else. The smell of this abandoned warehouse was very unpleasant. It was more like a garbage dump, and he could even hear the screams of rats. Of course. Irene glanced at Westcott indifferently. Her attitude was no longer as respectful as before. Like a block of ice, her eyes stared at Westcott without moving, occasionally flashing with cold light. What do you mean by this? Westcott frowned. He could naturally feel the cold air from Irene's body. He was instantly infuriated. A clown dared to challenge him? To put it bluntly, Irene was just a tool for him to capture elves. But at this moment, this tool dared to look at him like he was a prey. Wasn't this rebelling? What do I mean? Don't you know this? What an idiot. Don't you think this place is very suitable for a graveyard? No one would know if someone died. A cold voice suddenly came out from the corner of her mouth. Irene looked at the stunned Wei Scott with a sneer. You dare to scold me? Wei Scott looked as if he was struck by lightning. He looked at Irene in a daze. He didn't expect that this subordinate who was usually respectful to him would call him an idiot at this moment. Figure out your identity. Don't forget who gave you this favor. Wei Scott was furious and said sternly, I can ruin your reputation at any time, and even take your life. You know my ability. Whether I'm speaking nonsense or not, you know best in your heart. As a senior of the DEM company, Wei Scott's ability was indeed extraordinary. But this wasn't a reason for Irene to be afraid of him. Irene sneered and said, however, before my reputation is ruined, you will definitely be finished. Irene's expression was cold as she pounced at Wei Scott with lightning speed. So fast. Wei Scott's pupils suddenly shrank a few times. He exclaimed that she was indeed the most powerful magician among humans. In the blink of an eye, she launched a thunderous attack. Bam! A kick came, and Wei Scott's body trembled. His face was as pale as snow, and his internal organs were shaking violently. Faint traces of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. This kick didn't show any mercy and wanted to end Wei Scott's life. You dare to betray me? Wei Scott was kicked back repeatedly. Fortunately, he had his own secrets and was only lightly injured in the end. But his face was very interesting. Green and white alternated, and his hair was about to stand up from anger. All this time, he was the one who schemed against others. Who dared to scheme against him? But now, he was tricked by someone else. Moreover, it was his most loyal subordinate. How could Wei Scott not be angry? I want you to die without a burial place. Wei Scott's eyes were spitting fire. He was smart all his life, but he was stupid at this moment. He didn't expect to be tricked by his own subordinate. This was a great humiliation. P.S. 3,000 rewards, 3,000 fresh flowers, 1,000 comments, 500 automatic subscriptions. Chapter 2157. As a confident and successful man, betrayal was a taboo, especially for a man like Westcott who had a strong sense of control. The higher he stood at the top of the pyramid, the more he was afraid of failure. He could not tolerate even a speck of sand in his eyes, not to mention that he had been plotted against by his subordinates. This was worse than death. Before I destroy you, I have a question you must answer. Suddenly realizing something, Westcott's expression was extremely gloomy. He looked straight at the girl's perfect face and held back his anger. He gritted his teeth and asked, What's the reason? Why did you betray me? Is there someone more worthy of your loyalty than me? Well, it's very simple. Irene looked at Westcott with contempt and said calmly, Actually, I feel that my wings have hardened and I don't need you anymore. Is that okay? Unknowingly, Irene had also been infected by Dustless and her words had become infuriating. Hearing this, Westcott immediately spat out a mouthful of blood and looked at Irene angrily. What kind of ridiculous reason was this? What did she mean by, my wings have hardened and I don't need you anymore? Was there a more arrogant reason than this? This was simply a slap in the face and disdain. No one has ever dared to speak to me like this. You are the first, and you will also die a horrible death. Westcott roared, his handsome face twisted. Irene's words had trampled on his dignity, and the consequences were even worse than beating him up. Then I'm sorry. I was thinking that it would be best if you could commit suicide. Then I wouldn't have to do it myself. After all, we are acquaintances. Irene was tit for tat, completely different from her usual quiet self. Her aura was strong and confident, and her whole body radiated a spirit that was not inferior to men. Her eyes stared straight at Westcott, occasionally flashing with undisguised contempt. It was obvious that she did not take Westcott seriously. Compared to Dustless, you are far inferior in every aspect. After pondering for a while, Irene's eyes were filled with disdain as she spoke of the instigator behind the scenes. As expected. It's that bastard. Hearing this, Westcott was furious, but he did not feel surprised. He only felt that it was ironic. He had sent Irene to assassinate Dustless and Night Sword God Toka, but in the end, his trusted subordinate had jumped ship. This was a great humiliation. Shut up. You're nothing compared to him. You're just a rat hiding in the dark. Hearing that Wei Scott dared to scold her boss, Irene's expression turned cold. With a flash, she appeared in front of Wei Scott without any warning. Pah! When the slap landed, a glaring blood-red handprint appeared on Wei Scott's face. How dare you slap me? After being stunned for a moment, Westcott finally realized that he had been slapped by Aileen. He felt as if his lungs were about to explode. How aggrieved was it to be slapped by a traitor? I'm not just going to slap you. I'm going to kill you. Irene looked at Westcott expressionlessly. Her tone was filled with killing intent. Clearly, she wasn't joking. Kill me? Wei Scott sneered like a cunning wolf. His eyes glowed with a ghostly green light. You're underestimating me. If I could be killed so easily, I would have died a long time ago. Time flew, and 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. It's been so long. Why hasn't Irene returned? Could it be that she failed? That shouldn't be. Although Irene's strength is no match for mine, it's more than enough to take care of Wei Scott. In Itsuka Kotori's house, Dustless looked at the blue sky in the distance. He lowered his head and pondered. Could it be that Wei Scott still has a trump card to deal with Irene? Maybe there really is. That guy is very scheming. Itsuka Kotori suddenly interrupted. Her face was tense, and she was very cautious. She wasn't this nervous when she met the elves. That guy is not simple. He might have some tricks up his sleeve. But there's another possibility. Itsuka Kotori suddenly changed the topic. She looked at Dustless with a gloating expression. Maybe Irene submitted to you because she wanted to buy time. Do you know what I mean? Dustless. Maybe Irene was just pretending to submit to you so that she could escape. Kotori. It's not a good habit to talk about other people behind their backs. Dustless glanced at Itsuka Kotori and said confidently. You're right. But I believe in Irene. She knows what's best for her. Tiesuke. You're just being unreasonable. Then why don't you explain why she hasn't returned for 3 days? Itsuka Kotori chewed on her lollipop and looked at Dustless with arrogance in her eyes. Maybe it's because of an accident. Dustless shook his head. He wasn't an omniscient god. How would he know? Then he suddenly said, but it might be as you guessed before. Irene has encountered some big trouble that she can't solve. Bang! Dustless opened his mouth and was about to say something. Suddenly, the closed door was opened by a huge force. Rain? Dustless looked at the hurried Murasame Rain with surprise. He was surprised. For a long time Murasame Rain was the kind of extremely quiet type. She was rarely so rude. Commander, I don't know why. Shido is missing. Murasame Rain looked at Itsuka Kotori and revealed the news she just got. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2158. Shido is missing? How is that possible? Itsuka Kotori was stunned for a moment, and then she muttered to herself in disbelief. Her delicate face turned ugly, and her delicate fists were clenched tightly. After all, Itsuka Shido was Kotori's only family, and there was no doubt about their relationship. Since they were young, Kotori's favorability toward Itsuka Shido was 100%. Missing? That's strange. Dustless was also shocked when he heard Rain Murasame's report. He carefully recalled the original plot, and he didn't remember Itsuka Shido going missing. Maybe he was kidnapped. Dustless narrowed his eyes and said, that kid is very special, maybe he was captured alive and used. I think so too. Rain Murasame agreed with Dustless's opinion, and nodded carefully. I asked Shido's classmates, and many of them said that he was strange these days, and he seemed to be absent-minded. Damn it! Who did it? Itsuka Kotori angrily knocked on the table, and at this moment, she was like a huge barrel of gunpowder, and her anger could be felt no matter how far away she was. Not good. Rain Murasame looked at the angry Itsuka Kotori, and she was worried. If the elf's emotions were out of control, the consequences would be very serious. Even if Itsuka Kotori's spiritual power was sealed by Dustless, the consequences would be unimaginable. Well, this is Dustless frowned slightly, and suddenly he felt that some kind of power in his body was disappearing. He couldn't help but look at the angry Itsuka Kotori, and he could feel that Itsuka Kotori's power was gradually increasing, and he was surprised. Is this spiritual power reversal? Don't worry. Dustless gently patted Itsuka Kotori's shoulder, and comforted her. Kotori, don't worry, in fact, the culprit is already out. In this world, other than Aesi. Who else could it be? Are you saying? Hearing this, Itsuka Kotori felt a little better, and her emotions gradually calmed down. Her eyes lit up, and she sneered. You mean DM? That's right, those guys are the most suspicious. Who else but them? That kid Westcott is very interested in the power of the elves, but he hasn't given up after Irene's failure. I'm afraid he'll use other tactics, such as capturing Atoka Shido alive to threaten us into handing over the elves. Dustless shrugged and said bluntly, previously, I ordered Irene to assassinate DEM's top executive Westcott, but she hasn't returned yet. I'm afraid there's also a problem. I'm afraid it was that bastard Westcott who did it. Itsuka Kotori slammed her fist on the table with murderous intent. Her pink eyes were filled with murderous intent and filled with an ominous, sinister aura. Is there any specific information? Dustless looked at Murasame Rain. He was quite confident in the intelligence collection of Ratatosker. Murasame Rain must have collected some evidence. There are some, but I don't understand it. Murasame Rain said helplessly, I don't know much, but I'm afraid it was done by DEM. Say it. Itsuka Kotori only said one word, but whether it was Dustless or Murasame Rain, they all felt a chill. That kid is better off dead. Seeing Itsuka Kotori like this, Dustless prayed sincerely in his heart, and suddenly he felt that Atoka Shido was very annoying. Murasame Rain also looked at Itsuka Kotori a few more times, and immediately said seriously, during this period, many people saw Shido take the initiative to get into a black car. I investigated according to the license plate number, and found that although it's not from DEM, it has a lot to do with them. Humph. Sure enough, it's those guys. Hearing this, Itsuka Kotori suddenly became angry, and stood up angrily. It seemed that she was going to find trouble directly. But we haven't figured out the reason yet. Even if we find them, we have no excuse. After all, Shido took the initiative to go with others. Murasame Rain was quite helpless. In addition to Shido himself, maybe it's because of other people, don't forget, there's also a little girl that Itsuka Shido cares about very much. Dustless suddenly took a sip of tea, and immediately said calmly, I remember that Itsuka Shido has a little sister, seems to be called Chonggong Shina, seems to be from DM. As long as they use her as a threat, Itsuka Shido will definitely take the bait. Boom. Perhaps because of the reverse flow of spiritual power, Itsuka Kotori's strength became a lot stronger, and she directly smashed the table and said angrily, those guys are really despicable, damn it. Although it's just a guess, it's not impossible. Sure Dao is such a sentimental person. Murasame Rain also sighed. She knew what kind of person Itsuka Shido was. As long as the other party used Chonggong Shina as a threat, Itsuka Shido would definitely take the bait, and he would be the kind of person who would never back down. It just so happens that I'm also going to DEM. I'm also looking forward to seeing what that kid has. Dustless's eyes were cold, and he smiled sinisterly. Although I don't know why Irene didn't come back, I'm sure that it's Way Scott who did it. He's just an ant, but he has guts. After all, Irene had already followed him, and Dustless naturally couldn't be indifferent when she went missing. Phew! Itsuka Kotori took a deep breath, trying to calm down her bad mood, and said seriously, that's good, Rain, you go and prepare now, and bring me all the information about DM. Wait a moment, Commander. Murasame Rain nodded and left. She couldn't help but mourn for Way Scott. If he offended these two, she was afraid that his end would be extremely miserable. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2159. She knew Itsuka Kotori's temper. Even if she hurt herself, she wouldn't hurt Itsuka Shido. Otherwise, this little girl would go berserk. In the original work, it was because Toshisaki Kurumi injured Itsuka Shido that Itsuka Kotori went berserk. Her spiritual energy reversed and she turned into a spirit. She displayed her powerful strength and defeated Toshisaki Kurumi, almost killing him in the end. After dealing with that arrogant idiot, it's about time to leave. Dustless muttered to himself as he looked at the warm sun outside the window. The idiot he was talking about was Wei Court. Dustless stretched his back and squinted his eyes in enjoyment. Although this kind of life was comfortable and unrestrained, it gradually became boring as time passed. No matter what it was, whether it was people or things, as time passed, the feelings would fade away. The interest in the beginning would turn into boredom. Leave after success? Itsuka Kotori looked over. Even though Dustless was muttering to himself, she could still hear him clearly. She couldn't help but ask strangely, "Are you going to leave? Do you still have a home?" All good things must come to an end. Dustless nodded and looked at the dazed Itsuka Kotori's face. He smiled and said, "What's wrong? You've never been good to me, so why are you looking so pitiful now? Can't bear to part with me?" Dustless got closer to Itsuka Kotori and looked at her beautiful face with a teasing expression. Humph. After hearing Dustless's words, Itsuka Kotori's unnatural expression quickly disappeared. She said with disdain, "Who would like a lecherous man like you? Stop dreaming. Do you think I'm a glutton like Toshiaki? That I can't even find my way around because of some soybean flour bread?" Dustless didn't get angry. Instead, he smiled as if Itsuka Kotori wasn't talking about him. "You're really heartless. To think I wanted to take you with me. Of course." Hearing this, the joy in Itsuka Kotori's eyes disappeared instantly. Her expression changed at lightning speed. She looked at Wu Chen with disdain and snorted. "There are countless people who like me. Even if I wait for a few decades, it won't be your turn. This girl really likes to push her luck." Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had seen many narcissistic and arrogant people, but it was rare to see someone as arrogant as Itsuka Kotori. Dong dong dong. At this time, the sound of high-heeled shoes was heard again. Wu Chen and Kotori looked over and saw Murasame Rain's voice. "You're here already? Rain, you've collected all information about Wei Court?" Itsuka Kotori saw Rain Murasame, who left for less than 2 minutes, and ordered in a low voice, "Go and check it again. I want all the details. Will Court is very mysterious. Everything about him must be. Looks like it's not necessary." Before Itsuka Kotori could finish, Dustless interrupted her. He saw the anxiety in Murasame Rain's eyes and shrugged. "I'm afraid there's a new problem. I just changed my clothes and was about to go out when I saw a letter at the door." Murasame Rain put the letter on the table, and the sender was Wei Court. "That guy wrote a letter?" Dustless curled his lips and said with disdain, "He's just a small fry. Why would he write a letter? Idiot!" Murasame Rain and Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless speechlessly. They didn't know what this guy was thinking. "What did it have to do with you?" Ahem. Noticing that the two women were looking at him strangely, Wu Chen coughed awkwardly. "I mean, the content of this letter is probably a challenge letter or a threat letter. That stinky bug is about to lose his life, but he still wants to play this game. Isn't he asking for humiliation? He's asking to be humiliated. I'd like to see what kind of tricks Wei Court is going to play." Itsuka Kotori opened the envelope and took out the letter. She squinted her eyes and looked at it carefully for a while. Bang! A few minutes later, Itsuka Kotori angrily slammed the table and said with hatred, "That guy really caught Shido and asked me to give him all the elves, or else." "Or else what?" Murasame Rain asked nervously. Seeing Itsuka Kotori's pale face, she vaguely guessed something. "Do you still need to say it?" "Of course it's to kill them." Wu Chen gulped down a mouthful of tea. There was a faint evil smile at the corner of his mouth. He was not worried at all. Instead, he took pleasure in other people's misfortune. He could not help but laugh secretly. If Itoka Shido can be killed, I will be merciful and grant Wei Scott a complete corpse. In fact, he didn't like Itsuka Shido for a long time. This guy didn't have any power at all, but he still wanted to save the elves. Wasn't he looking for death? If it wasn't for Dustless, this guy would have been killed already. Now that Wei Court was willing to help Dustless get rid of this burden, he couldn't ask for more. It's the same as Dustless's guess. Murasame Rain took the letter in Itsuka Kotori's hand and looked at it carefully. She frowned and said, "He really used Shido. No wonder he left with Wei Court's people. But didn't Shido think that this must be Wei Court's trap? I told you. Dustless was quite calm as if he already expected this. Itsuka Shido is too kind. He used the emotional card a little bit, and that guy will definitely be fooled. It's not that Wei Court is too smart, it's just that Itsuka Shido is too naive. Without power, he always wanted to do things beyond his ability. It was only a matter of time before he was unlucky. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2160. Humph. It's too late to say anything now. Don't worry about these useless things. What's important now is how to save my brother and your Irene. Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless and said seriously. Especially when she mentioned your Irene, she purposely emphasized the word, your Irene. Obviously, she was reminding Dustless not to get involved. Although Itsuka Kotori wasn't happy with what Dustless said before, she could only grit her teeth and admit it. After all, this was the truth. Itsuka Shido was too childish when it came to relationships. After being tricked and used slightly, even if he knew that it was a trap, he would still persevere and fall into it. The current situation was like that. He clearly knew that Wolcott wasn't a good person, but he still fell into the trap. Where is the place of the transaction? Dustless didn't want to argue with Itsuka Kotori and looked at Rain Murasame. Their company, DEM in our company. Murasame Lingyin's face was ugly. This was like a sheep entering the tiger's den. What if we reject Wei Court's offer? Itsuka Kotori frowned and asked. This? Rain Murasame went silent for a while and read the letter carefully. She shook her head and said, "It's not detailed. He just asked us to take Toka and the others to DEM's company to sell Irene and Shido. We can only follow Wei Court's arrangement for now." After hesitating, Itsuka Kotori nodded. For her, Itsuka Shido's safety was more important than anything else. I reject. But Dustless looked coldly at Itsuka Kotori and said seriously, Toka and the others aren't goods. You want to trade them? I reject no one. Hearing this, Itsuka Kotori was enraged. Are you out of your mind? If you reject, not only will Shido die, even Irene won't be able to escape Wei Court's torture. He hates traitors. Itsuka Kotori took a deep breath and said in a low voice, I know Wei Scott quite well. That guy is definitely a despicable person. The reason he didn't mention what would happen if they rejected him in the letter is probably to torture them slowly. Is that so? So what? Dustless took a sip of tea and said coldly, I've done a lot of bad things in my life, but no matter what, I've always had a clear conscience. I've never regretted my actions. If you want me to trade the 10 incense with someone else, dream on. You're a blockhead. Itsuka Kotori shouted angrily. She looked at Dustless's expressionless face and felt helpless. She had no choice but to mediate. I'm only giving them the 10 incense temporarily. Do you think I'm abandoning the elves? Even if you agree, I won't. Itsuka Kotori's job was to protect the elves. How could she hand the elves over to Weiss Court? Absolutely impossible. The reason why he did this was because he wanted to redeem Itoka Shido and the others, and then find a way to rescue Toka and the others. I still refuse. Wu Chen shrugged his shoulders. His unyielding attitude made Itsuka Kotori extremely depressed. She roared, Do you want Irene to be tortured to death? Just watch on helplessly? Was he going to leave her to die? I remember that Irene has already joined you. I didn't say that I'm going to leave her to die. Don't accuse me. Dustless shook his head mysteriously. His eyes emitted a scarlet murderous aura. He looked at Murasame Rain and asked, Do you know the location of DEM's company? DEM has a lot of industries, and the important companies are hidden in the dark. But in order to facilitate this transaction, Weiss Court told us the location of the meeting. That's enough. I'll do this transaction. Hearing this, Dustless smiled. With the detailed location, why would he worry about not being able to destroy Weiss Court? Dustless didn't like him for a long time. That kid will definitely die, especially since he dared to capture his people. As for Go Shido, Dustless was too lazy to manage him. If possible, He didn't mind finding a suitable opportunity to get rid of Go Shido. This kid was always a burden. If he continued to be with him, maybe he would cause some big problems. You finally agreed? Seeing Dustless's confident look, Itsuka Kotori thought that he agreed to hand over Toka and the others temporarily. She immediately took a sip of her coffee and smiled. I didn't expect that the blockhead would finally be enlightened. You misunderstood me. Dustless glanced at Itsuka Kotori and said coldly, I plan to go alone and kill all those people and get Irene. As for handing over Toka, I'll say it again. Dream on. I've said it before, I don't want to live a grand life. I just want to have a clear conscience. Itsuka Kotori's chest rolled, and she spat out all the coffee. She looked at Dustless angrily. Why didn't this guy understand what she meant? He was only temporarily handing 10 Fragrance and the others over to Wei Scott to stabilize the situation. He would then find an opportunity to snatch them back. However, Dustless was incomparably stubborn at this moment. He was completely one-track-minded and did not know how to be flexible. That little girl trusts me a lot. If I hand her over to Wei Court, how do you expect me to face her in the future? Dustless asked calmly. Although his tone was light, it was firm. Not to mention, Dustless sneered and said, that idiot Westcott actually dares to bargain with me. He doesn't even know what kind of existence his enemy is. Send him to his death. Destroy that bull-shastrisk tedium company along with him. Dustless's tone was extremely calm. Itsuka Kotori and Murasame Rain looked at each other. Hearing Dustless's words, their scalps went numb. DEM company had thousands of employees. Was this guy going to kill them all? The two girls stared at Dustless. Suddenly, they realized that they were wrong. Dustless may seem like a gentle and quiet person, but deep down, he was a demon king who killed without batting an eyelid. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 100 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2161. Seeing Dustless's insistence, Itsuka Kotori felt helpless. After all, the decision was in Dustless's hands from the very beginning. Toka and the others only listened to Dustless. Even Toka Kurumi, who was always at odds with Dustless, had to follow Dustless's orders. Since you've made up your mind, I won't stop you. Remember to be careful. Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless seriously and said with a hint of concern in her voice. Don't worry. It's just Wei Coat. I can squash him to death with a single breath. How dare he bargain with me? He must be tired of living. Dustless's body emitted a bone-chilling aura. Those who tried to bargain with him never had a good ending. Hee hee. TSK. If it weren't for your value, I would have killed you traitors long ago. A man's sinister laughter came from a sealed room. This room was very special. The walls were made of special steel. The material was extremely hard and shiny. There were also 3 conspicuous crosses. Irene, Itsuka Shido, and Shina Chongoya were all tied to the crosses. Their expressions were painful. The man with a sinister smile in front of them was the infamous Weiss Court. You despicable bastard. Irene looked at Wei Coat and cursed him for being careless. When Dustless ordered her to kill Wei Coat, Irene hesitated. In fact, she had the absolute advantage and could have killed Wei Coat at any time. However, she didn't kill him in the end. Firstly, she wasn't the merciless type. Secondly, Wei Coat had a hostage. Irene didn't kill him. However, as the saying went, the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Knowing that Irene was moved by compassion, Westcott tried to persuade her with reason and moved her with emotion. Very soon, Irene was tricked, and it was too late for regrets. Despicable? Perhaps. Westcott only responded softly. He didn't care whether it was despicable or honorable at all. He smiled and said, however, these are not important to me. As long as I get the elves, I will leave this broken place of Japan. I can give up everything else. The only thing I care about is the elves, including you, Irene. Wei Coat looked deeply at Irene and said, actually, it's right for you to betray me. Because one day in the future when I get the elves, even if you didn't betray me, I will still kill you. Why? Irene's face was ashen. She glared at Wei Coat. This bastard's intention to get rid of her. Do you even need to say it? At this moment, a cold voice suddenly rang out. Everyone was stunned, including Westcott. Who is it? Get out here. Wei Coat looked around and found that there was no one around. He broke out in cold sweat. This room is sealed to defend against sudden attacks. It's made of special steel and the most advanced technology of this era. But this sound, where did it come from? Wei Coat's face was ugly. His eyes widened again. He looked around, but there was still no one. Irene, the reason why he wants to kill you is that if the elves disappear one day in the future, you, the strongest magician and former ally, will become the biggest obstacle. This mysterious figure hit the nail on the head. He also planned to do so. After the elves disappear, Irene would be redundant. It would be best if she died. I see. Hearing this, Irene understood and nodded in agreement. She smiled bitterly and said, "That's right. If the elves disappear, my value will be greatly reduced. I will even become a threat." But you are. Irene's mind buzzed. She suddenly felt that this voice was familiar. A young man's figure appeared in her mind. You are Lord Dustless? Dustless. Wei Coat looked as if he had seen a ghost when he heard this. His face drooped and became gloomy. Towards Dustless, Wei Scott had always harbored reverence in his heart. He wasn't an elf, but he had a strength that was even more terrifying than an elf. Wei Coat had a love-hate relationship with Dustless. He loved Dustless' powerful strength, but he hated Dustless for being too treacherous. With just a few words, he made Ellen betray him. If it wasn't for Wei Coat's intelligence, he might have been killed by Ellen. Hee, but there is nothing to worry about. Wei Coat was relieved after thinking about it. He said calmly, "This secret room uses the most advanced technology. Even if I set it up as a precaution, the elves will not be able to break in." Humph. How can a vulgar person like you understand my master's strength? You are just a frog at the bottom of a well. How laughable. Irene took the opportunity to mock him. Is that so? Then why doesn't he come in? Wei Coat laughed sinisterly. If he can come in, I will stand there and let him kill me. I promise I will not resist. Boom boom boom. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a deafening sound swept across the room. Endless shockwaves spread out. It was so strong that people could not open their eyes. Then, a blinding light shone in. Look, I have come in openly. Shouldn't you be standing there to die? The Grim Reaper's voice echoed in Westcott's ears. He ignored the piercing pain in his eyes from the scorching sun and forcefully opened them. A glowing figure stood in front of Westcott, tall and straight like a mountain. Wei Coat, right? Give me your neck. I have not killed anyone for a long time. I have specially come to send you to heaven. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2162. How is this possible? Who do you think you are to come in so easily? Weiss screamed at the top of his lungs. His old face was stinging. He had just said that he would block Dustless outside, and this guy had barged in. Wasn't this a little too fast? How is it not possible? Dustless asked back. What you can't do doesn't mean that others can't do it either. You're so stupid. Do you think that others can only stand behind you and look up to you if you can't do it yourself? Really, you're even more narcissistic than that little brat coterie. Dustless mocked Wei Scott. At the same time, he glanced at Irene. As for Itsuka and his sister, they were in a trance. Their faces were pale and bloodless. Clearly, they had been tortured by Wei Scott. What a silly girl. She actually fell into a trap to save Shido. Dustless could only roll his eyes after eavesdropping on their conversation. In fact, he really wanted to kill Shido. It would be best if he died. He was too much of an eyesore. Cut the crap. Where's the elf? You've seen my letter, right? Where's the elf I need? Why did you come alone? Looking into the distance, Wei Scott realized that Dustless was the only one who came. Wei Scott's expression instantly turned black as a black pot. He smiled sinisterly and said, "Have you forgotten what I said? Elf." Dustless looked directly at Weiss, completely ignoring his crazy expression. He sneered. You still dare to bargain with me? Kill yourself now and I'll leave your corpse intact. I don't even want to dirty my hands with trash like you. You! Wei Scott was instantly enraged. He looked at Wu Chen angrily. Not only did this bastard ignore his agreement, but he even dared to look down on him. How dare he? You forced me to do this. Wei suddenly strode towards Irene and smiled evilly. Since you didn't bring your elf, I'll kill the hostage. Let's start with Irene. As soon as he finished speaking, he took out a dagger and slowly slid it towards Irene's neck. I didn't even blink. Seeing the approaching dagger, Irene didn't know why, but her mind was incomparably calm. She looked at Wei Scott with disdain. Following you for a few years, I can only say that I was blind to follow a wild dog that eats people without spitting out the bones. After that, Irene closed her eyes and waited for death. You're courting death. Wei Scott was enraged by Irene's words, and the dagger in his hand stabbed towards Irene's forehead. At the same time, a strong gravitational force locked onto Irene, uprooting the cross that bound her. 10,000 mammoth heavenly attraction. Just as the tip of the dagger was about to pierce through Irene, a gravitational force that distorted space and time erupted from Dustless's palm. It locked onto Irene tightly and sucked her body together with the cross. Is this the power to control gravity? Wei Scott's eyes froze as he looked at Dustless in disbelief. Meanwhile, Irene had already landed beside Dustless. Although she's trash, she can tell that I'm controlling gravity. Not bad. Dustless nodded slowly, silently agreeing with Wei Scott's words. Then, I want you even more. Irene escaped. Not only did Wei Scott not realize the danger, but he became even crazier. He realized that compared to Dustless, any elf was weak and couldn't even withstand a single blow. You're courting death. Locking onto the madness and greed in Wei Scott's eyes, Dustless revealed his killing intent. After so many years, there was still someone who dared to look at him with greed. It was probably during the period when Dustless hadn't risen to power yet. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Without wasting any time, Dustless condensed a dazzling light at the tip of his thumb and aimed it at Wei Scott's head. Don't mess around or we'll fight to the death. As if sensing the aura of death, Wei Scott suddenly shivered. He quickly pointed at Itsuka Shido and threatened, You saved one, but I still have 2 hostages. If you dare to do anything to me, I'll humiliate them both. Wei Scott warned loudly. In fact, he didn't dare to kill Itsuka Shido and Konya Shina at the moment. He was still counting on them to threaten Dustless to live. Are you sure? Hearing this, Dustless's lips curled up into an evil smile. He laughed in his heart. I originally planned to kill you and end it once and for all, but it seems that I can postpone it. I'll purposely provoke you, kid. It'll be best if I can borrow your hand to kill Itsuka Shido. Then, it'll have nothing to do with me. Thinking of this, Dustless lowered the light in his hand. Phew. At least you know what's good for you. Seeing this, Wei Scott heaved a sigh of relief. Having Dustless's bright light aimed at his head, he was really scared. Hee, looks like there's still a chance. Then, Wei Scott laughed excitedly. Since Dustless chose to give up on attacking, it meant that he still cared about Itsuka Shido and Konya Shina's lives. Poochie. However, not long after, Wei Scott felt a sharp pain in his right leg. He almost lost his balance and fell to the ground. This. Looking down, Westcott was shocked to discover that there was a hole in his right calf at some point in time. Furthermore, the wound was emitting a smell of smoke. Clearly it was charred. Be *starred. I'll make you pay. Having his calf crippled by Dustless, Wei Scott was instantly enraged. He glared at Dustless. This guy was too strong, so naturally, he didn't dare to cause trouble. Therefore, Wei Scott vented all the accumulated anger in his body on Itsuka Shido. Bang bang bang. Slap slap slap. With his right leg crippled, Wei Scott, who was a powder keg, was completely ignited. He punched and kicked Itsuka Shido like a madman, slapping and slapping him like crazy. In less than 10 seconds, Itsuka Shido's body swelled up. There were injuries all over his body. He was beaten up by the angry Wei Scott. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2163. Bang, bang, bang. Wei Scott was like an angry lion. Dustless could not afford to offend him, but that did not mean he could not afford to offend Ito Shido. Wei Scott laughed bitterly and beat him up without hesitation. Poochie, poochie, poochie. After a few seconds, Ito Shido spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. His face was red and purple, and there were fist marks all over his body. He looked extremely miserable. Although Wei Scott did not dare to kill Ito Shido directly, he still inflicted the greatest pain on his body. You bastard, why did you hit me? The one who punched you in the leg was that guy, right? Ito Shido was still in a daze, but after Wei Scott's beating, his mind suddenly became very clear. He looked at Wei Scott angrily, and his mind was filled with hundreds of thousands of, "What the F asterisk CK? What, you don't like it?" Wei Scott sneered, and his handsome face was full of arrogance. "I don't like you, okay? Can't I hit you to vent my pain? You dare to talk back? Pa, pa, pa." At the end of his sentence, Wei Scott gave him a few more slaps. Ito Shido's mouth was crooked, and blood mixed with teeth fell out. It was as miserable as it could be. "It hurts." Ito Shido screamed. His face was swollen and bruised, and he looked like a pig's head. His eyes were also punched a few times, and the fist marks were black, like a panda's. Ito Shido, didn't hit you. What's the point of bullying me? If you have the guts, go beat up someone else. Ito Shido shouted angrily. Being beaten up by Wei Scott for no reason, no matter how good his temper was, he was still furious. Dustless hit you, and you hit him if you have the guts. What's the point of bullying me? You still don't like it? Interesting. Wei Scott was shocked, but it only lasted for a moment. He looked at Ito Shido with even more anger and cursed. "That Dustless looked down on me, and now you, a piece of trash, dare to look down on me? You deserve a beating." Bang bang bang. Thinking of this, Wei Scott kicked Ito Shido twice more. He was extremely cunning and purposely chose the softest part of his abdomen to attack, causing Ito Shido to grit his teeth in pain. Why is this brat so tough? Dustless, who was expressionless on the side, was actually laughing in his heart. At the same time, he was secretly speechless. It seems that the protagonists of every world are all thick-skinned and extremely durable. Pooh! In the end, Itsuka Shido spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. What a pity. He's still breathing. This Westcott has a pig's brain. Can't you just give him a stab? Fight my ass. Dustless cursed inwardly, but on the surface, he was filled with righteous indignation. He looked at Westcott furiously and rebuked, "How dare you bully Sherdao like this? I'll make sure you die without a complete corpse." Hee, are you sad? Westcott looked at Dustless with interest. When he saw that Dustless wanted to tear him into pieces, he was elated. He secretly laughed. "Although I can't beat you, at least I can make Dustless so angry." Thinking of this, Westcott's big hand grabbed Ito Shido again. Slap slap slap. After a few more merciless slaps, Itsuka Shido, who had been knocked unconscious, opened his eyes and mouth again under the stimulation of pain. He glared angrily at Wei Scott, who was beating him like a madman. Just as he was about to curse, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his mouth. Westcott became fiercer and fiercer. He knocked out Ito Shido's front teeth and his mouth was full of blood. Sob sob sob. "Shido, I'm sorry." Seeing Ito Shido's miserable appearance, Dustless actually squeezed out 2 drops of tears and cried in sorrow. "The more you cry, the more I'll beat you. I'll make you angry," Westcott thought. Sob 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 sob. Seeing that Westcott ignored him and continued to beat Ito Shido, Dustless cried even harder. Dustless's cries became louder and louder. Westcott became more excited when he realized that Dustless must be concerned about Ito Shido. Bullying this kid was indirectly hurting Dustless's self-esteem. Westcott became fiercer and fiercer. "This guy." She looked at Wuxia carefully and saw his sorrowful appearance. She lowered her head and muttered to herself, "This guy can't be doing this on purpose, right? He clearly knows that the more he cries, the more Wei Scott will beat Itsuka up. Yet, he still cries so sadly.
In fact, if one looked carefully, one would discover that Wu Chen's shoulders were twitching and the corners of his mouth were twitching non-stop.
How was he crying? He was obviously laughing non-stop.
He was just forcefully squeezing out tears to cover it up.
It's on purpose. It must be on purpose.
It's definitely on purpose.
Ito Shido glared at Dustless.
His eyes were bleeding, and so were his ears and nose.
After being beaten up by Westcott, he was severely injured. Even his abdomen had caved in.
Ha!
Dustless's crying stopped instantly. He suddenly felt a cold gaze. He subconsciously looked up and realized that Ito Shido was staring at him.
Have I been discovered?
Dustless didn't hide it after being discovered by Ito Shido.
The corner of his mouth curled into a bloodthirsty smile.
In that case, you can be on your way. Don't worry, kid. I'll take care of your sister for you. Roar. As if reading Dustless's mind, Ito Shido roared. However, he was already crippled. His throat was no longer normal, and he could only roar like a wild beast. Go to hell, Tsukuyami. With a roll of his eyes, boundless mental strength invaded Ito Shido's mind. Dustless gave Ito Shido a pretty good death. At the very least, he enjoyed 24 hours in Tsukuyami's world, enjoying the treatment of an emperor in the world. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2164. Kid, don't play dead. Get up, you're my trump card. If you die, I'll be surrounded by these people, Westcott roared. Seeing Ito Shido's eyes were closed and he wasn't even breathing, Westcott slapped him a few more times. He instinctively felt that Ito Shido was faking it. After all, even though he had abused Ito Shido, it was only physical abuse. He didn't attack any of his vital organs. Westcott knew that Ito Shido was his life, so he couldn't kill him. He didn't have the guts either. Without a hostage, he would be eaten alive. Slap, slap, slap. Seeing that Itsuka Shido didn't move at all after the slap, Westcott was furious.
He cursed in his heart. This brat is really good at acting.
It's like it's real. So he slapped him a few more times.
Brother.
However, Itsuka Kotori, who had just arrived, happened to see this scene. Seeing Itsuka Shido's pitiful state, her eyes turned red. Shido, wake up. I know you're just too tired and fell asleep. Don't play dead. After a while, Ito Kotori called Ito Shido's name with a trembling voice. Her voice was so sad that anyone who heard it would cry. However, Ito Shido ignored her. His eyes were still closed, and he looked dead. Ito Kotori was speechless. It was as if she had been abandoned by the world. She was petrified. No need to scream. No one will listen to you even if you scream yourself hoarse. Ito Shido is dead. Dustless said with a heavy expression. There was a hint of sadness in his voice. This guy is a movie king. Irene was speechless. Her eyes were twitching. She was sure that Dustless had deliberately killed Ishido. However, as Dustless's little brother, Irene chose to remain silent. She pointed at Westcott and angrily rebuked, "It's all because of this bastard that Ishido died. I'm going to cut you into pieces." Itsuka Kotori looked at Westcott coldly. Her eyes were like a venomous snake that had been hungry for a long time. Her eyes were filled with venom, making Westcott's heart tremble. Kotori had also witnessed the scene of Westcott beating up Shido. Oh no, this is bad. Westcott felt a chill run down his spine. Naturally, he also sensed the danger. He instinctively took a few steps back and hid behind Chong Gongzana's body. He threatened loudly, "You'd better know your place. Be careful or I'll kill this little girl." With the dagger pointed at Shonya Shina, Westcott warned, "This guy is Itsuka Shido's only sister. He wouldn't want his own sister to die, would he?" It had to be said that Westcott was quite smart. He knew how to make use of the human form. After hearing this, Itsuka Kotori's body stiffened. She was hesitant. There's a chance. Fortunately, I'm smart. I didn't see the value of these trash. Seeing Itsuka Kotori's hesitation, Westcott let out a sigh of relief. The reason why Itsuka Kotori stopped was because she didn't want Shido's only sister to die. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At the same time, a large number of light beams came from afar. Countless women wearing display devices descended from the sky and quickly arrived at Wei Scott's location. These trash. What a waste of time. They've been waiting for me for so long. Are they finally here? Wei Scott's heart was relieved. He finally felt that there was hope for him to live. It's a Tokichi Origami and Hikari Fujiko? Dustless looked up and suddenly saw two familiar faces. To save a scumbag like you, AST mobilized so many people. They really care about you. Itsuka Kotori suppressed her anger and gritted her teeth. Hee, of course. After all, we have a symbiotic relationship. If I'm dead, who can provide AST with the display device they want? Wei Scott chuckled and said with a tone as if everything was under his control. My death won't benefit AST. It's expected that they would lower their heads and help me. Not to mention, they were just using each other. Wei Scott's death wouldn't benefit AST either. AST's mission is to capture the elves. The elves are all in Dustless's hands. Since they appeared here, capturing the elves is also one of their missions. Alright, there's something else I forgot to tell you. Wei Scott's face was gloomy. His hoarse voice was filled with pride. I forgot to tell you. When I first started, I knew that you wouldn't hand over the elves. So, I made two preparations. Now that AST is back, it means that the mission I gave them was completed perfectly. Two preparations? What do you mean? Itsuka Kotori was embarrassed. Even though she wanted to cut Wei Scott into pieces, she had to hold it in. I ordered AST to attack your house. Looking at Itsuka Kotori, Westcott laughed coldly and said, the elves' powers have been sealed. Capturing them will be a piece of cake for us. Now that AST is here, it can only mean one thing. The mission was completed perfectly. How is it? Now the tables have turned, right? Ha ha ha, it seems that I'm the final victor. Wei Scott looked at the silent Dustless with disdain. He purposely laughed loudly as if he was afraid that Dustless would not hear him. You sly bastard. It's a perfect match for DEM to have a scum like you, Itsuka Kotori said angrily. Thank you for the compliment. Wei Scott calmly accepted Itsuka Kotori's compliment, but his eyes were fixed on Dustless. He wanted to capture a trace of sadness, but Dustless was like a calm sea, not showing any sadness from beginning to end. His expression was as calm as usual. Wei Scott could even feel the mockery and contempt in Dustless's eyes, as if he was watching a clown's performance. Wei Scott suddenly felt a sense of apprehension and hesitation as if a disaster was about to befall him. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2165. After hearing such a perfect plan from me, this guy should be disappointed. Will Coate scrutinized Dustless, trying to find a flaw on his face. However, he was destined to be disappointed. All along, Dustless's expression didn't change. He was like a piece of lifeless ice, silent and uncommunicative. It was as if everything had nothing to do with him. You're the one who should be disappointed. Idiot. Of all the people, you actually chose AST to work for you. Are you retarded? After a moment of silence, Dustless's face showed a mocking expression. You. Good boy, I've already captured the elves, and you still dare to talk to me like this? Aren't you afraid that I'll kill all of them? Will Coate threatened loudly. His words were filled with madness, and it seemed like he was really going to kill him. Do you see that? Pointing at the AST members flying over from afar, Will Coate laughed. Each of them has elves in their hands. What are you going to use to fight me? You don't know what's good for you. Looking closely, he saw the AST members flying over, each of them carrying elves. Something doesn't seem right. Will Coate suddenly realized something and muttered to himself, puzzled. If the elves were tied up in chains, it would be understandable. But the strange thing was that the little hands of Yamazaki Toka and the others took the initiative to hold on to the AST members. Especially when the elves were talking and laughing with the AST members. It was simply blinding to Will Coate's dog eyes. Strange. When did the elves start to be so obedient? Will Coate asked with a frown, his eyes flickered, and immediately guessed. Could it be that Tokiichi Origami and the others used some trick to deceive the elves? Is that why they are so peaceful and friendly? All along, the elves had been synonymous with cruelty, extremely unfriendly to humans, and even more so to AST who wanted to kill them. Now they were so harmonious. Wilcote found it unbelievable. Anyway, no matter what, AST brought the elves over. This means that victory is in my hands. Soon the doubts in Wilcote's heart disappeared, and he looked coldly at Dustless and sneered. Why aren't you screaming now? Come and kill me.
If you dare to touch me, I'll kill one of the elves, since there are so many of them. One more won't matter.
You despicable trash. Irene and Itsuka Kotori glared at Wei Scott furiously. Their eyes were burning with fire as if they wanted to burn Wei Scott alive. This guy was too cunning. He wasn't strong, but he was good at scheming. I want to ask, is this your trump card?
Dustless completely ignored Westcott's mockery and asked calmly. I'll give you one last chance.
Show me your other trump card. If your trump card is just to threaten me with the 10 incense sticks. Westcott, right? You'll die a horrible death. Moreover, your so-called trump card is actually a lousy one. You're just asking for humiliation. Then I'll have to disappoint you. This is my trump card. Westcott snorted valiantly and arrogantly, showing off his arrogance as he said, Do it if you have the guts. I can guarantee that I'll kill an elf for every step you take. Ha ha ha, you still want to fight me? Ha ha ha. His unbridled laughter filled the air, and Irene and Itsuka Kotori's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Either one of them could easily kill Westcott, but the lives of the elves were still in Westcott's hands, so they didn't dare to say anything. Master. At the same time, the members of AST landed on the ground, and each of them had an elf in their hands, and they looked very respectful. Very good, ha ha ha. Westcott laughed wildly again, and looked down at Dustless with a crazed look and said arrogantly, Kneel now or I'll kill these elves. It doesn't matter if one of them dies. You be *starred. Itsuka Kotori and Irene's faces turned green. They didn't expect Westcott to be so despicable, using the lives of the elves to force Dustless to kneel. This man was not bad looking, but his actions were too disgusting. Kneel and beg me. Westcott screamed madly in his mind. He was going to pay back the humiliation he received from Dustless. Hearing this, Dustless looked at Wei Scott with pity. After looking at him for a while, he asked speechlessly, Are you a pig? Or are you retarded? You're asking for it. Westcott's face twisted, and he looked at the elves in Tokichi Origami's hands, and ordered coldly, Tokichi Origami, kill her now. After saying that, Westcott looked at Dustless arrogantly, sincerely hoping that this guy would kneel down and beg for mercy. However, Dustless only kept silent, and even closed his eyes, as if he had nothing to do with it. Bastard, are your ears plugged? Kill her. Westcott was furious. Dustless ignoring him was bad enough, but what angered him the most was that Tokichi Origami was also standing still, as if she didn't hear the order just now. Now, kill the brat in your hands. Westcott roared again, his voice sounding like an enraged lion. However, what made Westcott vomit blood was that Tokichi Origami didn't even look at him. Rebel, are you all rebelling? How dare you ignore my order? Do you believe that I'll make you pack up and get lost? A mere AST dares to challenge me. You're courting death. Westcott roared like an erupting volcano, his tone filled with endless anger. However, Tokichi Origami and the others still didn't move, treating Westcott's words like air. They didn't even look at Westcott, and only stared at one person with respectful eyes. Dustless. Westcott, haven't you figured it out? You've been wrong about one thing from the beginning. Dustless suddenly opened his eyes, and looked at the twisted middle-aged man with pity. The lord they called before was me. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2166. Call you Lord? Bullshit. Without even thinking about it, Wilcourt immediately denied it. Dustless sneered. Do you think I'm an idiot? This group of people is AST, the most hostile existence to elves, even more so than me. How could they be with you? AST was a special organization established to annihilate elves. They would try their best to destroy any elves they encounter. Dustless was a group of people who protected elves. How could they recognize Dustless as their boss? This joke was not funny at all. You don't believe me? Hearing that, Dustless looked at Wilcourt with a mocking expression. He then looked at Yuichi Origami and the others and said lazily, "Who are you calling Lord? Some idiot's head is stuffed with donkey hair. His head can't hear clearly. Let him hear it clearly. You're going too far." Hearing that, Wilcourt was furious. This bastard, as a powerhouse, did not have the bearing of a powerhouse at all. He mocked him the moment he opened his mouth. He was too willful. "I advise you to be sensible." Wilcourt was too lazy to argue. He only looked at Yuichi Origami and the others with an unfriendly gaze. His eyes were flickering with a cold light, obviously warning them. However, Yuichi Origami and the others did not even look at Wilcourt. They treated this guy as a clown and directly ignored him. Lord Dustless. Under Wilcourt's incredulous gaze, Yuichi Origami and the others kneeled on one knee and looked at Dustless with a respectful expression. How is this possible? Why is AST and the organization that protects elves together? Have you all betrayed us? Wilcourt roared furiously. Looking at Yuichi Origami and the others kneeling on the ground, his eyeballs almost popped out. First, Irene betrayed him. Now, AST, who he trusted, also betrayed him. Wilcourt even wanted to die. His face was green with anger. How could he endure this? He was being played around by Dustless like an idiot. This guy. Itsuka Kotori and Irene looked at each other, and they could see the shock in each other's eyes. Dustless was able to subdue AST without them noticing. This was a method that sent chills down their spines. After all, AST was extremely hostile towards elves. "Rise, all of you." Looking at the girls kneeling on one knee, Dustless revealed a gentle smile. Why did he conquer this group of arrogant girls? In fact, it was very simple. There was only one word. Strength. No matter which world one was in, having the supreme power to crush a world would give one a great right to speak and one could walk unscrupulously. Yuichi Origami was subdued by Dustless's strength and resurrected her parents. Therefore, this cold and arrogant girl submitted to him. She lowered her arrogant head and obediently followed Dustless's orders. Therefore, Dustless finally convinced the entire AST through Yuichi Origami. In the past, AST had a great battle with Dustless because of the Night Sword God Toka. The result was very miserable and they were crushed. From that moment on, this group of girls feared Dustless. Now, it was natural for them to side with Dustless. Madhav ****, you bunch of ingrates trash. After being stunned for a while, Wilcourt cursed loudly. He was so angry that his eyes were seeing stars. His angry roar echoed in the sky and lingered in the air. "I was the one who provided you with your ambition. Now you betrayed me. You bunch of trash, aren't you afraid of suffering?" Wilcourt was like a gambler who had lost a lot, cursing desperately. "Humph, Wilcourt, you hypocritical wolf, this isn't over." However, at this time, the controlled Chonggong Xena looked coldly at Wilcourt and said coldly, "Shido has told me that you guys conducted secret experiments on my body. I only have 10 years left at most." "You knew." Hearing this, Wilcourt's expression changed drastically. Chonggong Xena's piercing cold gaze made his heart tremble. He said in a trembling voice, "You knew? There's no such thing as an airtight wall in this world. You think you can deceive everyone? Can you not be so ridiculous?" Dustless looked at Wilcourt with pity. He couldn't be bothered to argue with this homeless dog. "Kotori, I'll leave him to you. No matter what, he must die in the end." "I'll definitely let him die, but not now." Kotori nodded. She then looked at Shido, who was beaten to death by Wilcourt, and said in a low voice, "Killing him directly is too easy for this guy. I'll repay you for everything you did to Shido. In your dreams." Without a second thought, Westcott turned around and ran for his life. What a joke. He had just beaten Shido to death. What if he was tortured by Kotori Itsuka? He can still run so fast with a crippled leg? In the face of death, a person's potential is indeed stimulated. Dustless had just crippled one of Wilcourt's legs, but this guy was running for his life like a tiger, as if nothing had happened to him. "Then I'll have to cripple your other leg." Dustless's eyes were cold. He suddenly raised his right hand and activated the glint fruit ability.
A dazzling light gathered in front of his hand and aimed at the limping Will Court.
Whoosh whoosh whoosh.
With a light flick of his finger, the dazzling light shot out in a straight line like a rocket.
Poochie! Weiss Court's other leg was instantly pierced through, leaving behind a bloody hole. It was too horrible to look at. Moreover, due to the incomparably blazing speed of light, the bloody hole was instantly charred. Plop!
Westcott was heavily injured, and fell to the ground in a sorry state.
He looked at Coterie, who was slowly walking over, with a face full of fear. He had just beaten Shido to death, and this brother complex definitely wouldn't let him go. A pitiful person must have something to hate. Dustless was expressionless.
He shook his head at the regretful Will Court.
If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have done it in the first place. He still had to pay back the debt he owed. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 300 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2167. Everything came to an end with AST's surrender and Will Court's defeat. Dustless knew that his journey in this world had come to an end. Although they did not see Will Court's body, since this guy killed Itsuka Shido and tortured him to death, he must have a miserable ending if he was handed over to Itsuka Coterie. After all, Itsuka Coterie was a brother complex. Just as Dustless was planning when to leave, an unexpected person suddenly visited him. Meijio the Temptress. Miss Meijio the Temptress, just tell me what you want. In Itsuka Coterie's house, Dustless changed his usual teasing and poured a cup of hot tea for Meijio the Temptress. Of course, this was just for show. He knew that Meijio the Temptress hated men. Even talking to Dustless would be an insult, let alone drinking his tea. Dustless also knew that Meijio the Temptress was not a bad person. She was just an innocent little girl. It could only be said that the trauma she suffered in the past had left a shadow in her heart. However, the scene that happened next was truly beyond Dustless's expectations. Gulp gulp. Meijio the Temptress drank the tea Dustless served without saying a word. She poured herself another cup of hot tea and drank it very quickly. It seemed that she was very thirsty. Miss Meijio the Temptress, you didn't come to me to drink tea, did you? Wuxia asked strangely. In fact, he was going to leave soon. If he could resolve the grievances, he would resolve them. He didn't expect to lure Xiao Meijio to leave this world with him. After all, he had cheated her before. Now, Wuxia felt embarrassed when he thought about it. Are you leaving? Meijio the Temptress suddenly looked at Dustless nervously and asked very seriously. Where are you going? Is it far? Hearing this, Dustless was silent for a moment. In the end, he looked at Temptress Meijio like an idiot. His speechless gaze was clearly asking Temptress Meijio, does this have anything to do with you? However, out of politeness, Dustless still said seriously, of course it's very far, but how did you know? I should have only told Xiang and the others about this. Of course it was Toby Origami and Toby Xiang who told me. Temptress Meijio said without hesitation, they are my very good friends. Origami Kite? Dustless frowned deeply. Only then did he remember that Night Beauty Jo was a Yuri lover, and in the original work, she was very interested in origami. None of your business. Suddenly thinking that Xiao Meijio might want to steal the girls, Dustless's attitude changed drastically. He snorted and said, I have nothing to say about this. Don't meddle in other people's business. You bastard. Temptress Meijio's mouth twitched. She secretly cursed Dustless bastard. Was she so annoying? Please pay attention to your attitude a little bit. Humph. Wuxia just snorted coldly with an unapproachable expression. He said coldly, I can tell you very responsibly that they are all mine. Since you dare to steal my girls, you are really overestimating yourself. If not for the fact that I know you don't hate me, I would have slapped you to death. Also, I am going to a very far place, and I will not come back with them for the rest of my life. This is our farewell. You bastard, you have no right to decide other people's future. Hearing this, Temptress Meijio suddenly became angry. She liked Yuichi Origami and the others very much, and so did the other elves. It was just because Dustless, this third wheel, was here that everything became so disharmonious. Whether I have the right to decide or not is not up to you. You have no right to talk nonsense. Besides, have you forgotten who you are? Hurry up and call me master, Dustless said disapprovingly. Itsuka Kotori and the others wanted to leave with him. How could Temptress Meijio stop them? You don't push it. Temptress Meijio's face was red, and she was extremely miserable. Every time she communicated with Dustless, she would be angered by him. Besides, even if I don't have the right to decide, do you have the right to? Dustless retorted. After a moment of silence, Temptress Meijio's expression changed. Finally, she gritted her teeth and asked, "Where are you going?" "I want to go too. No matter where it is, I will go." F***CK. Hearing this, Dustless could not help but curse. He was speechless and looked at Temptress Meijio as if he had seen a ghost. He could not help but ask himself, is Temptress Meijio crazy? She is crazy to be a lesbian. Is she not afraid that I will do something inappropriate to her? Dustless was in a dilemma. As the saying goes, a woman will dress up for her lover and die for her lover. Now, Temptress Meijio chose to dance with the wolf in order to be a lesbian. She was willing to be in the same boat with the person she hated the most. Dustless was really impressed, but he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Even so, Dustless was quite happy for Nightblade God 10 Fragrance and the others. All along, no matter what, seducing Night Meijio was sincere to them. Just this point alone was enough. Do you agree or not? Temptress Meijio looked at Dustless nervously. Her eyes were shining, and her pitiful eyes circled around Dustless. Even her eyes were wet, and her appearance of being on the verge of tears was really pitiful. It was as if she was threatening Dustless that she would cry as long as he rejected her. This girl seems to be serious. It doesn't look like she is pretending. Dustless frowned. He could see the true meaning of Temptress Meijio's eyes. He could not help but curse. The world has really changed. What are you muttering about? Seeing Dustless's face twitching wildly, Temptress Meijio saw it clearly. She thought that Dustless refused. Finally, she made up her mind and did something that Dustless did not expect. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 evaluation votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2168. Temptress Meijio's small white hand slowly reached for the buttons of her dress and skillfully unbuttoned them. Then the gifts on her body fell off in the blink of an eye. Her dazzling body was clearly exposed under Dustless's eyelids. Compared with this flawless and perfect body, the bright lights in the bedroom were overshadowed. Even though Dustless was a veteran in the field of flowers and an old monster who had lived for hundreds of years, his eyes could not help but stagnate. "You take off your clothes without saying anything?" Wu Chen was stunned for a moment before these words came out of his mouth. Immediately, he looked at the Temptress Meijio in an extremely speechless manner. He could not help but ask, "Is there any relationship between you taking off your clothes and me bringing you away? Are you still a man?" Unexpectedly, Temptress Meijio ignored Dustless's question and said resentfully, "I'm not even wearing clothes to cover my body. Do you still have the mood to care about other problems? Can you get hard?" After saying that, Temptress Meijio looked at Dustless's most important part as a man. "Can't you do it? No wonder that group of beautiful girls are still virgins." Hearing this, Dustless's face suddenly turned green. In these decades, he was finally angered once. "You bastard. Pay attention to your words. If you dare to talk nonsense again, I won't be polite to you." Dustless was very depressed. The group of girls that Temptress Meijio was talking about was naturally Yedao Shen Shixiang and the others. Every one of them is fine. They are all virgins. It can only mean that I keep my body as pure as jade. Dustless looked at Temptress Meijio seriously and said, "You keep your body as pure as jade?" Temptress Meijio's forehead darkened, and then countless crows flew past. Dustless was surrounded by beauties. There were countless beauties of different sizes. This guy actually shamelessly said that he kept his body as pure as jade. He was simply too shameless. "Let me see how thick your skin is." Temptress Meijio seemed to be really angered by Dustless. Her white hand suddenly grabbed Dustless's cheek. "This bastard's skin is so delicate. How can I endure this? After touching it, Tempting Beauty Geo was surprised to find that Dustless's skin was extremely elastic. It was very delicate and smooth like silk. If this guy wasn't surrounded by beauties, he could really be connected to pure ice and pure jade. Blinking her eyes, she tempted Xiao Meijio to think so. Take your hand away. How dare you offend me? I am your master. Who gave you the confidence? Dustless's face darkened and he unceremoniously slapped away Xiao Meijio's little hand. At this moment, if Meijio looked carefully, she would be able to see the awkwardness and unnaturalness in the depths of Dustless's eyes. Meijio was so close to Dustless, and her clothes didn't cover her body. If not for his good mentality and ability to suppress his emotions, Meijio might have already begun to wail at this moment. Quickly put on your clothes for me. Gently biting his gums, the pain made Dustless restore his previous calmness. He looked at Meijio's eyes and said slowly, answer my question. What does taking you away from this world have to do with you taking off your clothes? Stupid there must be. Meijio curled her lips in disdain and said righteously, you slept with me so I am yours. Then you took me away. Isn't this natural? Hearing this, Dustless's face trembled a few times. After a moment of silence, he finally sighed and said, this valiant reason really makes me speechless. If these words were said by a man, Wu Chen could still accept it. However, after being seduced by Xiao Meijio, everything changed. He was speechless. In that case, I won't hide it anymore. You can understand what I mean by leaving. I will never appear in this world again. Are you sure you want to go with me? Dustless looked at Meijio and asked. Of course. Meijio was surprised by Dustless's answer at first. Then, she nodded seriously. Her resolute tone didn't seem like she was hot-headed. Then do as you wish. It's fine as long as you don't regret it. Dustless nodded slightly and immediately said in an indifferent tone, but I'll say the ugly words first. Even if you cry and scream in the future, I won't take you back. Don't treat me like a child. Night Tempter Meijio snorted disdainfully, and then suddenly became excited, as if she had found a fun toy. Those who have been conquered by me are no challenge at all. For those who go against me, such as you, making you heretics kneel at my feet is the greatest interest in life. Your taste is really unique. But then again, I can understand. Challenging things can often arouse a person's interest, but you are a heretic. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Meijio's strange idea really refreshed his understanding. However, Wu Chen did not blame seducing Night Beauty Jiao. When he was young, he was also like seducing Night Beauty Jiao. He always liked challenging things. After all, everyone had a time when they were young and frivolous. They liked to constantly surpass themselves. Dustless, Kuan. At the same time, Murasame Rain's voice suddenly sounded. She looked at the naked Meijio and couldn't help but daydream. Don't get me wrong. I'm just teaching a self-righteous girl a lesson. Seeing Murasame Rain shook her head, Dustless quickly explained. It would be a tragedy if he was mistaken as a pervert. Don't worry, I understand. Murasame Rain smiled slightly and winked at Dustless. I know you like flowers in the storm. Those flowers in the greenhouse can't withstand your destruction. You don't know shit. Looking at Murasame Rain with gloomy eyes, Dustless couldn't wait to kick her twice. This girl was obviously deliberately adding fuel to the fire, but he was too lazy to entangle with this kind of trivial matter. He asked bluntly, have you finished the things that should be done? It has been completed. Shido has been buried. The problems that should be dealt with have been dealt with. We can leave probably tomorrow. Murasame Rain also showed a trace of expectation in her words. The earth was so big. It seemed that it was still the same. If possible, everyone wanted to explore a more vast world. After all, curiosity was human nature. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2169. What the hell is going on? What happened to you guys? Murasame Rain looked at Temptress Meijio strangely. It was not that she was suspicious, but at the moment, Temptress Meijio's face was really strange,
sometimes blue and sometimes white, looking at Dustless angrily, as if she had suffered a lot of anger. This guy is simply too shameless. Temptress Magio snorted coldly, and immediately told Murasame Rain all the previous causes, gnashing her teeth and accusing Dustless's crimes. You mean Dustless said that he is pure and chaste? After a while, Murasame Rain looked at Dustless as if she had seen a ghost, as if she had discovered a new continent. What's with your eyes? Dustless's old face was slightly red, looking at Murasame Rain angrily, and scolded angrily. Isn't it? Have I done anything out of line? This is not true, but... Murasame Rain finally saw the realm of shamelessness. Dustless sealed the power of Itsuka Kotori and Yato Toho and others, and the way was to kiss. However, this bastard said that he was pure and chaste, which was simply too shameless. I know what you are thinking. Dustless saw through Murasame Rain's mind at a glance, and said domineeringly, I sacrificed my body and kissed them, do you think it's for myself? Wrong. It was a big mistake, a big mistake. I'm doing this to save the world. Pucci. Hearing this, Murasame Rain just drank the herbal tea, and all of it was spurted out. She looked at Dustless with amazement. What kind of strange experience did this guy have? He could be so shameless to such an invincible level. My ability to twist words and force logic has reached perfection. You can even make a dead person come back to life. Moving her mouth, Murasame Rain tried to refute Dustless, but she was speechless. She was depressed to find that even if Dustless was unreasonable, what he said was really right. Dustless sealed the elves, to some extent, he saved the world. After all, the elves often went berserk, and it might involve innocent people. The Eurasian air disaster decades ago took the lives of hundreds of millions of people. Forget it. Bickering with this guy is just asking for humiliation. Looking at Dustless with hidden bitterness, Murasame Ling-een was relieved. She immediately frowned and looked at the seductress Dustless. The departure that Mr. Dustless said is to leave this world forever. Are you sure you want to follow him? Follow me? Dustless snorted in dissatisfaction and said awkwardly, This ambitious girl just wants to steal my woman. Puff, that's right. You have a rival in love. Murasame Ling-een heard Dustless's ridicule, and instantly smiled like a blooming flower. She secretly gave a thumbs up to the seductress Dustless. She was sure that if other people dared to say this, they would have already been cut into pieces by Dustless, and there would not even be a corpse left. Of course, Tokichi Origami will leave with you. What's the point of me staying here alone? Seductress Magio said seriously, Anyway, I'm sticking to you. Women really can't be looked at with ordinary eyes. Dustless looked at the seductress Magio with his hands on his waist, and his eyes were stern. Obviously, she was not joking. Dustless still clearly remembered that a few days ago, this girl who felt disgusted talking to men would show a look of disgust when she saw him. Now this huge change was really puzzling. In the morning of the next day, Itsuka Kotori and the others spent about the afternoon and finally prepared everything. Itsuka Kotori resigned from her original position. Anyway, all the elves had been taken away by Dustless. She didn't live up to her title as the commander, and the sudden death of Itsuka Shido was a big blow to her. It was good to leave this world and relax. Murasame Ling-een was no exception. Since Itsuka Kotori resigned, she didn't need to continue to stay in this world. It was good to see other strange worlds. As for the rest of the girls, they didn't have any extra opinions. After all, they were all elves, and they didn't have any relatives. As long as they were with Dustless, they would be satisfied. The world inside the system was always so bright and beautiful. The mountains were clear and the water was clear, the sky was blue, and countless majestic mountain ranges rose from the ground. Ancient huge palaces were located among the mountains, and the pavilions were filled with a poetic and picturesque feeling. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a paradise. Looking down from the top of the mountain, the scenery of the whole world was in the eyes. It was beautiful. This time, Wu Chen didn't leave in a hurry like before. Instead, he spent some time with his confidants. After all, it wasn't easy for them to meet each other. Separating from the vast expanse was unfair to everyone. Therefore, Wu Chen stayed for about half a month. However, some people were born to be restless. This kind of peaceful life was fine for a short period of time, but after a long time, Dustless's body began to itch. It was boring to live in the system world forever. Ready. Linger looked at Dustless and said. Beside her, a dark hole was clearly visible. It was a space tunnel. As for what the world on the other side was, Dustless didn't know. Which world to land in was like drawing straws. It was all up to Dustless's luck. Phew! After taking a deep breath, Wuchen reluctantly looked at the dazzling female confidante behind him. The gentleness in his eyes gradually disappeared. He stepped into the space tunnel and embarked on the journey. This was a bright world. In the dense primitive jungle, rare beasts of unknown species could be seen from time to time. They just lazily crawled on the ground, enjoying the rare sun bath. However, this beautiful tranquility was soon broken by an ear-piercing scream. The migratory birds resting on the branches all spread their wings and flew high into the sky. There was no other reason. This ear-piercing scream was simply too frightening. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2170. Oh! Get lost, bastard, get lost! You pervert, beast, scum that exudes a demonic aura. I'm going to burn you into charcoal. The voice that was close to going berserk swept out like a hurricane, spreading through the entire primeval forest. The surrounding birds and beasts flapped their wings and flew away in fright. This furious voice seemed to be even more terrifying than a demon, but it was very crisp and pleasing to the ear, even if it was angry. Clearly, the owner of this voice was a young girl. F***CK. Is there a need to be so unlucky? Why did I end up in such a desolate place after coming out of the space tunnel? Dustless rubbed his head. His bones were all broken after falling from a height of 10,000 meters. His entire body was falling apart, and his head was dizzy. The world was spinning, and he couldn't find his bearings. He looked around, and an endless primeval forest came into view. He didn't know which desolate place he had fallen into. Noisy, noisy, noisy. Noisy my ass. With all his bones broken, Dustless was in an extremely bad mood. If it weren't for the fact that the 10 tails had healed in an instant, he would have been smashed into meat paste. Damn it, you're just a mere beast. How dare you talk to me like that? I'm going to burn you into charcoal. The young girl with long fiery red hair said angrily. Her delicate, jade-like face was full of anger, and her eyes were filled with tears. Even the surrounding space became hot because of the young girl's anger. This guy. Dustless turned his head to look at the young girl, and suddenly felt that she looked familiar. He asked without hesitation, May I ask if you are Claire Lucho? After hesitating for a moment, Dustless finally asked. If this young girl was Claire, it also meant that this was a world where elves use swords to dance. You know me. The young girl was stunned for a moment, full of surprise and vigilance. Soon after she said valiantly, Don't think that I can spare your life just because you know my name. You pervert. You deserve to die 10,000 times for daring to look at me bathing. Pervert. Hearing this, Dustless wanted to cry but had no tears. Looking over, he saw a naked Claire soaking in the clear pool, clearly washing her body. Damn it, I didn't even get to see anything, and I'm being treated as a pervert. What a waste. Dustless cussed in his heart. If he really saw it, Dustless would accept being called a pervert. After all, he was lucky to see it. But sadly, Dustless had just fallen from the sky and hit his head hard. How could he have the time to check on Claire? His head was still dizzy. Since you said I'm a pervert, then I'll do what a pervert should do. Otherwise, wouldn't I have been scolded for nothing? Then wouldn't I be at a loss? Dustless's lips curled into an evil smile as he looked at Claire impudently. Even though she had used clothes to cover the important areas, Dustless's sharp eyes could still see the rest of her skin. Bastard, you perverted beast, close your eyes. Claire's pretty face was bright red as she looked at Dustless in anger. This bastard was too hateful. She didn't know where he came from, but he actually dared to peep at her so openly. Pervert, do you know what you're doing right now? Claire angrily rebuked with clothes and hands covering the important areas. I know, I'm just watching you bathe. You continue, I'll just watch. Dustless sat on the grass and observed the surrounding terrain as he spoke carelessly. Hearing Dustless's words, Claire directly vomited blood. This bastard was simply unscrupulous. Peeping at someone bathing and saying it so openly, as if it was natural. Just how shameless was he?
Brat. I have a task for you. Dustless looked around. This was clearly a primitive forest. If he wanted to leave, he could only rely on Claire. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. But when Dustless turned around, a sharp light attacked him. Pa! A vicious whip lashed Dustless's right shoulder. His clothes immediately burst open, and the sound was extremely muffled. If a normal person was lashed, their skin would definitely split open. And the instigator was the furious Claire.
Look at me one more time, and I'll dig your eyes out.
At the same time, Claire finished putting on her clothes and looked straight at Dustless.
That whip just now was a lesson.
Lesson. Dustless suspiciously glanced at Claire.
Looking at his injured right shoulder, he said rather awkwardly. So you were teaching me a lesson.
I thought you were tickling me.
I was about to thank you. You. Claire stomped her feet, her eyes about to spit fire.
She had never seen such an infuriating guy. Could his words not be so infuriating? I was attacking you, and you actually said I was tickling you? Preposterous. Are you looking down on me? Little girl, I advise you to be tactful and not offend me. Dustless stared straight at Claire, only to see her whip suddenly covered in a layer of flames. You advise me to be tactful? Hearing this, Claire almost fainted from anger. What's wrong with this bastard? This bastard peeked at me bathing and dared to tell me to be tactful. Damn it! Is there a school nearby? And you're a student of that school? Take me there now. Dustless's tone was light, but full of dignity. Who are you? An elf messenger? Do you think I'm an idiot?
There's never been a male elf messenger.
Claire looked at Dustless warily, her eyes full of disdain. It's not that you're an idiot, it's just that you're too inexperienced. Dustless looked at Claire very seriously. Who said there wasn't a male elf stone? The male lead, God Fengzhao, was a male elf. However, since Dustless had invaded this world, the so-called male lead was naturally doomed. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2171.
Claire glared at him angrily.
She didn't expect Dustless to be so hateful. Her chest was trembling with anger. Tisk, with your small body, you're waiting for me to peek at you? Disdain. Dustless curled his lips and snorted at Claire's cleavage. Although the girl was cute, her body was obviously like an airport runway.
You bastard, say that again if you have the guts.
Claire was really angry. Her hair was standing on end. This bastard peeked at her bathing. Not only did he not admit his mistake, but he even mocked her for her small breasts. This was unbearable. You're not tactful at all. Looking at the girl whose hair was standing on end, Dustless frowned slightly. You're such a beautiful girl. Why do you have to court death? You're too weak. Boom, boom, boom. These words thoroughly infuriated Claire. She stared at Dustless, only to see her open her mouth and recite a few ancient, cryptic incantations. Soon after, a violent flame erupted from her body. The flame gathered and didn't disperse. Then, under Dustless's gaze, it gradually condensed into a large flaming cat. Scarlet, don't be merciful. Teach this bastard a good lesson. Let him understand the consequences of offending me. Claire couldn't take it anymore and finally summoned her contracted sprite. It was a dark red kitten that bared its fangs at Dustless, baring its fangs at him. Boom, boom, boom. The big flaming cat named Scarlet was extraordinarily mighty. Its whole body was covered in flames, like a divine cat that controlled flames. The flames were under its control. Awoo! Awoo! Scarlet roared at Dustless. Its voice was muffled, fiercer than a tiger's, and its eyes emitted an ice-cold light. Perhaps Scarlet's aura was really powerful. The green leaves of the nearby trees withered in an instant and were burned into nothingness by the flames. So powerful. Dustless smiled and stood motionless, as if he had really been frightened.
However, his eyes were strangely calm, and if one looked closely, one could even catch the undisguised contempt. However, Claire was currently in a fit of rage and completely ignored Dustless. The only voice in her heart was to beat this brat to vent her anger. In all her life, Claire had never felt so sullen. Dustless had actually looked down on her time and time again. Not only had he peeked at her bathing, but he had also called her fat breasts. This was simply a great humiliation. He should be burned to a crisp. Go, Scarlet! With a wave of his hand, the little red cat, which was wrapped in flames, roared crazily as it charged forward.
Swish! Swish!
Because Scarlet was too fast, all that could be seen was a straight beam of light, and his body turned into an afterimage.
Hee, you're not moving? Silly boy, are you scared silly?
This is the consequence of offending the elf envoy.
You still dare to mock me?
Humph! You reap what you sow. Thinking of Dustless's taunts, Claire was even more furious.
He actually dared to mock her for being flat-chested. He was really tired of living. Claire's gaze was fixed on Dustless. She sincerely felt that this handsome face was too calm, like a pool of stagnant water, bottomless. At the same time when Claire looked at Dustless, Dustless's closed eyes suddenly opened, revealing scarlet eyes. The scarlet magatama slowly rotated like a blood-red gem, dazzling. The moment she met Dustless's eyes, Claire felt uneasy from the bottom of her heart. Scarlet, is it? Sit down for me. Dustless ordered calmly.
A strange ripple appeared in his eyes, and a majestic eye power was slightly activated. Ha ha ha! As if she had suddenly heard a funny joke, Claire held her stomach and laughed.
She pointed at Dustless and laughed hysterically. Boy, are you crazy? That's my contracted elf. How dare you order him around? Ignorant! Claire's face was full of disdain. Scarlet had signed a contract with her, and Dustless actually wanted to order him around? Was it really because Scarlet was a pet cat? Did he think he could order him around just because he wanted to?
Moreover, even if it was a pet cat, there were the type that strangers could not approach. You white! Looking at Dustless, Claire was about to mock him, but when she saw the red creature in Dustless's arms, her words stopped abruptly.
She was stunned on the spot. How is this possible? How can Scarlet be lying in your arms? Heavens! That's my contracted elf. Claire was stunned. Scarlet had a serene expression and was enjoying being hugged by Dustless. His expression was very infatuated, and he rubbed his furry head against Dustless's palm from time to time, enjoying Dustless's caress. It's just a cat. What's there to be proud of?
Dustless glanced at Claire indifferently and said sarcastically, "In front of my eye power, no matter what contract you have, this little guy is still my pet, right?" Scarlet couldn't speak, so he could only nod flatteringly. "Bastard! Give me back my Scarlet!"
Claire suddenly screamed when she remembered Scarlet's importance. What a sharp voice. "Miss, is there anything I can help you with?" At this moment, an unexpected voice suddenly sounded. Dustless and Claire were both stunned.
They rushed to the source of the voice at the same time, and a handsome young man appeared. The newcomer was quite handsome, about 16 or 17 years old. He wore a thick robe and looked at Claire curiously.
Could this kid be God Feng Zhao? What kind of wind blew this kid here? Is it the protagonist's halo? He really came at the wrong time. Dustless looked at this person in surprise, and this person's name suddenly popped up in his mind.
P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates.
Chapter 2172.
Man. Claire frowned slightly and immediately looked at God Feng Zhao with a pleading expression. She pointed at Dustless and cursed, "This bastard peeped at me bathing and tried to rape me." Claire indiscriminately accused Wu Chen, and the label of rapist was mercilessly pinned on him.
Ha! What nonsense are you talking about? Dustless's old face darkened.
He looked at Claire unhappily and warned, "Little girl, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. I'm not interested in your 2 lumps of meat, and I didn't peep at you bathing. It's just a misunderstanding between us. I don't mean to humiliate you, I just want you to take me away from here." Humph, are you scared now? Claire looked at Dustless with contempt. Seeing that Dustless refused to admit his crime, she thought he was scared. She immediately put her hands on her hips and ordered, "You bastard, you were looking at me lecherously just now."
When did I look at you lecherously? Dustless's old face turned green.
He scolded, "Little girl, don't talk nonsense." For the first time in his life, Dustless felt like a scholar meeting a soldier, unable to reason clearly. No matter what, he was still a monster who had lived for hundreds of years. Dustless wasn't the kind of guy who couldn't move at the sight of a beauty.
Want to rape you?
God Feng Zhao also looked at Claire in shock. Seeing her embarrassed and angry expression, it didn't seem like she was lying. He nodded lightly and looked at Dustless unkindly. This kind of person should be taught an unforgettable lesson.
Did you take the wrong script?
Dustless was extremely depressed. He looked at Claire and God Feng Zhao and cursed inwardly. The male and female lead actually joined hands to deal with me. This kind of thing hasn't happened in hundreds of years. But, since you want to get involved in this mess, then I won't be polite. Dustless looked at Feng Zhao coldly. He didn't have a good impression of any male lead. Furthermore, this scenario was too weird. He had actually become a rapist, and this god Feng Zhao wanted to be the hero to save the damsel in distress. He wanted to use him to establish his authority. Just thinking about it made Dustless feel aggrieved. His heart was filled with 100,000 alpacas. Be careful. This guy is very strange. He subdued my contracted spirit without me noticing. Looking at the red cat in Dustless's arms, Claire stomped her feet in anger.
Are you an elf messenger?
Taking a deep look at Claire, God Feng Zhao's eyes flashed with astonishment. Soon after, he looked at Dustless with extreme caution.
This guy is a bit strange. A man can actually subdue a fairy. He can't be a relative of the fairy you contracted, right?
Of course not. Claire pursed her lips and pouted.
She was rather cute. In fact, she was also very depressed.
No matter how she tried to contact Scarlet, this guy wouldn't budge. Dustless seemed to be even more affectionate than his own father. "Brat, you actually want to use me to establish your authority?" Dustless stared straight at God Feng Zhao with an ominous glint in his eyes. He had always been the one who tricked others and schemed against others. Now that the male and female lead had turned the tables on him, he felt very uncomfortable.
Everyone has the right to punish a rapist, like you. Not to mention that I only wanted to catch you. Even if I accidentally killed you, you deserved it. Laying your hands on such a cute girl. You really are a beast through and through.
God Feng Zhao glanced at the frightened Claire and said faintly,
"Accidentally kill me? Brat, are you an idiot?"
Dustless looked at God Feng Zhao with ridicule and said disdainfully, "Where did your inflated confidence come from?
Cut the crap and bring it on.
This time, I will beat you until your mother won't recognize you." God Feng Zhao had a rapist on the left and a rapist on the right.
At this moment, he had really angered Dustless. I am innocent, okay?
Sure enough, a beauty's ability was not to fight, but to charm people.
Swoosh swoosh swoosh.
God Feng Zhao didn't waste any more words. He aimed at Dustless's flaws and rushed over like a gust of wind.
Full of flaws.
Seeing Dustless's body full of flaws, God Feng Zhao curled his lips and rushed in front of Dustless in the blink of an eye. His huge fist smashed towards Dustless's face.
What fast speed. Is this guy really just an ordinary human?
Although his technique is a bit rough, it is obvious that he was an expert in the past.
Claire's beautiful eyes lit up. She couldn't help but look at God Feng Zhao in a new light.
She had only caught a glimpse of that unimaginable speed just now.
This stinking brat is going to be unlucky.
Looking at the fist smashing towards Dustless, Claire's face lit up with a smile. She could still vividly remember Dustless's humiliation just now.
Bang!
The fist smashed into Dustless's body, followed by a blood-curdling scream. "Ah, my hand! It hurts, stop pinching, it's going to shatter." The blood-curdling scream like a pig being slaughtered spread through the sky. However, this childish voice was the complete opposite of Dustless's aged voice.
How is this possible?
Why is God Feng Zhao the one being beaten up?
Claire's pupils shrank.
God Feng Zhao's fist was gently grasped by Dustless's right hand. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead.
You want to kill me with your half-baked skills? What a retard.
With a casual flick, Dustless sent God Fengzhao flying. Soon after, his old face was like a black walk as he pressed towards Claire.
What are you doing? I'm warning you, don't mess around. The young girl retreated in fear.
At this moment, Claire was really at her wit's end.
Mess around? So what if I mess around?
Since you've already said that I'm a rapist, why don't we make the act real for once? Claire was pushed to the front of the giant tree. With nowhere to retreat, she could only look at Dustless in fear. Her gaze was slightly trembling. She was extremely scared. That God Fengzhao simply doesn't know what's good for him. He even dares to use me as a stepping stone to save the damsel in distress.
Idiot!
Dustless sneered as he looked mockingly at the fleeing God Fengzhao. He was too lazy to chase after such an ant. No matter how much he grew, he was just a small character to him. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 average votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates.
Chapter 2173.
Dustless sneered as he looked mockingly at the fleeing God Fengzhao. He couldn't be bothered to chase after such an ant. No matter how much he grew, he was just a small character to Dustless, trash that he could destroy with a flip of his hand. Failing to court death and instead being abused, this was the best embodiment of a male lead. Looking at Dustless, Claire stammered for a long time without saying anything. She could only helplessly look at Dustless. Seeing his cold eyes, she could only beg for mercy. A great person won't hold a grudge against a petty person. Can you spare me this once? I'm still a child who speaks without thinking.
Child.
Dustless laughed involuntarily and asked coldly, Miss Claire, when you called me a rapist, why didn't you call yourself a child?
Who told you to peek at me bathing?
Claire said, feeling wronged. Her nose was sour and tears flashed in the corners of her eyes.
She looked like she was about to cry.
Forget it, just this once. Sighing, Dustless couldn't be bothered to argue with Claire. Moreover, he was the one who had been rude in the first place, barging into someone else's bathing area. Anyone would be incomparably angry if a girl was seen naked by a stranger.
Heh, this is the demeanor of a true expert.
Claire's small face squeezed out a brilliant smile, then she carefully looked at Dustless. Suddenly, she found that his cold face wasn't as annoying as before, but much more gentle.
Can I leave now?
After saying this, Claire didn't wait for Dustless's reply and quietly left.
Stop. I didn't give you permission.
Dustless stopped Claire after taking 2 steps. His body flashed and blocked the girl's path like a city wall. As long as Dustless didn't move aside, this natural barrier would never be able to be crossed.
You're going back on your word?
Claire looked worriedly at Dustless, her hair covered in sweat. She was nervous, filled with endless fear of this great demon king.
Back on my word? I'm not that despicable.
Bullying a girl isn't a skill. I just have something I need your help with. Dustless shook his head and immediately said, Take me to your school. I have no interest in staying in this desolate forest. Impossible, this is impossible, absolutely impossible. Without even thinking, Claire directly shook her head to reject Dustless's idea and explained, Our school only has female elves, what would a man like you do there? Thinking of how terrifying Dustless was, she didn't say the word pervert in the end. Claire was afraid of angering Dustless. This guy was simply temperamental, turning hostile on a whim. Female elves? Your lousy school is full of weaklings, and there are so many ridiculous rules. Dustless, Dustlesses, Claire's, Dustless S's, Dustless's, Claire's. Of course, there was a special exception, such as God Fengzhao. This guy was a man through and through, but he was also a proper elf's envoy. Alright, I can also become an elf's envoy. Dustless's imagination ran wild, his eyes flashing. He didn't think he was any worse than God Fengzhao.
You
want to become an elf's envoy? Haha. However, before Dustless could finish his sentence, Claire's mocking voice sounded. Don't say such childish and ridiculous things so casually in the future. It's not time to sleep yet. If you want to dream,
It won't be too late at night. You're too ignorant.
Some things are rare, but that doesn't mean they don't exist, Dustless said calmly. Claire still didn't know that God Fengzhou was an exception. All right, I'm not going back for now. Suddenly thinking of something, Dustless looked at Claire with a smile. It's still early, I still need your help with something. Gulp. Seeing Dustless sizing her up with glowing eyes, Claire felt a chill all over her body, as if she was dancing with a wolf. It wasn't that Claire was timid, but that Dustless was too strange. I remember you know of a secret place where a holy sword is sealed. Inside the holy sword, there seems to be a spirit. Looking at Claire, Dustless said what he was thinking.
How do you know about this? Who told you?
Claire was stunned for a moment, then incomparably shocked. She really felt that Dustless was a roundworm in her stomach. His clear eyes seemed to be able to see through everything.
You don't have to worry about that.
Dustless refused to answer and said lightly, Lead the way, Miss Claire.
Now is not the time to waste. Otherwise, when it gets dark, we'll have to sleep in the forest. I'm very scared of this quiet wilderness. At night, I need to hug something to sleep. Do you want to try?
My embrace is very warm, if you... Stop. Without waiting for Dustless to continue, Claire stopped Dustless and looked at him angrily.
You win. I'll take you there now, but if you fail, don't blame me.
Signing a contract with a spirit isn't as simple as you think. Hearing the strong threat in Dustless's tone, Claire could only admit defeat. It would be good if she could spend money to avoid disaster. Now, she was nervous just walking with Dustless, not to mention sleeping in the wilderness with Dustless. She even had to be hugged to sleep by this guy, which was worse than killing her. Little girls are indeed timid and can't take a blow. Maybe in her heart, I'm the reincarnation of the Grim Reaper. Seeing Claire's body twitching, Dustless smiled and didn't say anything. In fact, he was just casually scaring her. Even if Claire didn't take him, Dustless wouldn't make things difficult for her. Wanting to become a spirit envoy was just a spur of the moment. Success or failure didn't matter. Anyway, there was no loss. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 gifts plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates.
Chapter 2174. Little Girls.
Sure enough, they're all timid and can't take a blow. Perhaps in her heart, I'm the reincarnation of the god of death. Seeing Claire's body twitch, Dustless smiled but didn't say anything. In fact, he was just casually scaring her. Even if Claire didn't bring him along, Dustless wouldn't make things difficult for her. Wanting to become an elf envoy was just a spur-of-the-moment thing. Success or failure didn't matter. In any case, there was nothing to lose. Despicable guy, that's the elf I'm about to sign a contract with. Am I going to give it to this brat for nothing? What am I going to do in the future? Claire was silent the whole way. As they got closer and closer to the ruins where the elf's holy sword was sealed, her heart grew heavier and heavier, more and more unwilling. How could she give up something she'd obtained with great difficulty? Little girl, you'd better not play any tricks. Otherwise, I'll make you regret it for the rest of your life. Dustless's tone was abnormally serious as he suddenly appeared in front of Claire in a flash. That's mine. Pierced by the pain in her heart, Claire shouted in defiance. Don't you know this is the act of a bandit? Hearing this, Dustless only smiled disapprovingly. So what if I'm a bandit? The winner is king and the loser is a bandit. As the loser, you only need to wait to be robbed. Claire blinked and was speechless in the end. What Dustless said was the truth. His words were crude but reasonable. This was the nature of the world. Whoever was strong had the final say. How could she blame others for being bullied because she wasn't as strong as others? Moreover, looking at Claire meaningfully, Dustless continued to explain, that elf's holy sword isn't interested in you. You can't control it. Recklessly approaching it will endanger your life. Little girl, you have to understand that in this world, some things are still ownerless, but the outcome is already decided. When you can't obtain it, you have to accept it. Blindly coveting it will only bring misfortune. You speak as if you're the innate owner of the holy sword. Claire curled her lips in disdain. Not bad. Dustless's face was indifferent as he accepted it calmly. It's not that the holy sword chose me, but that I chose it. This is the biggest difference between you and me. The weak will only lower their heads and beg, while the strong will only choose the fate of others. But, then, Dustless changed the topic and looked at Claire with a smile. I've always liked to give others opportunities. How about this? I can give you a chance to sign a contract with a holy sword spirit. Whether or not you succeed will depend on your fate.
Really?
Claire was overjoyed and looked at Dustless with shining eyes.
Of course. In any case, to me, that holy sword is just icing on the cake. It won't play a decisive role.
The spirit sealed in the holy sword has rejected many people. If you can sign a contract with it, it can be considered a kind of fate.
Dustless nodded seriously.
Soon after, he looked into Claire's gem-like eyes and said with a smile, however, you also know that there is no such thing as a free lunch.
Everything has a price. What do you want to do?
Hearing this, Claire instantly became incomparably nervous. Seeing Dustless staring at her without blinking, she immediately became furious. You perverted beast, are you going to raise another dirty condition? I said before that I'm not interested in your 2 lumps of meat. You don't have any breasts, and you don't have any butt. I don't even know where to start. Dustless looked at the angry Claire with disdain.
You bastard, do you know how to speak human language?
Claire was furious. If she could, she really wanted the heavens to send down a bolt of lightning and strike this bastard to death. His words were too infuriating.
Tell me your conditions.
Claire suppressed her anger and demanded.
It's very simple. Tell me how to sign a contract with a spirit.
Dustless's cold tone was very serious as he looked straight at Claire, waiting for an answer.
Gulp.
Claire stared blankly for a moment before asking in astonishment, you don't even know how to sign a contract with a spirit, and you still want to become a spirit envoy?
I really don't know. Dustless shrugged.
As an outsider who had just arrived in this world less than half an hour ago, how would he know how to sign a contract with a spirit?
He still needed a local to explain it.
Ha 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 ha, I'm going to die of laughter. You don't even know how to sign a contract, and you still want to become a spirit envoy? Wishful thinking. The difficulty of becoming a spirit envoy isn't something you can understand, especially when you're a man. Claire grinned and laughed. She put her hands on her hips and looked unusually proud. Her eyes were full of disdain as she looked at Dustless. She was very sure that he couldn't become a spirit envoy. I really don't know how difficult it is to become a spirit envoy, but... A faint smile appeared on Dustless's face. However, if I defeat a spirit envoy, I only need to blow. Isn't even her contracted sprite still crawling at my feet? Even if Dustless can force the holy sword to bow its head, I will let it understand how terrifying it is to offend me. After saying that, Wuxia deliberately shook Scarlet, who had a flattering look on his face, in his arms. You! Claire looked at Dustless frantically.
She wanted to cry but had no tears.
It was a great shame for a dignified spirit envoy to be defeated by a weak, ordinary human. Moreover, even her contracted spirit was subdued by Dustless. Scarlet had always enjoyed the time she spent with Dustless.
Okay, I'll teach you.
Whether you can learn it or not is up to you. Claire had no choice but to compromise, but her heart was full of contempt. A man, an ignorant noob who didn't even know how to sign a contract, wanted to become a spirit envoy? This was something that could only be realized in fairy tales. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates.
Chapter 2175.
After spending about half an hour, Claire told Dustless how to sign a contract with an elf. Only then did the two set off again, rushing to the ruins where the elf was sealed.
Is this really your first time here? It feels so strange.
There are some things that you know better than I do. Claire scrutinized Dustless from the corner of her eye. She was full of doubts but had no answers, so she could only look at Dustless.
If you have something to say, just say it. Since I'm in a good mood, ask me any questions you have.
Maybe I'll be merciful and answer you. Strolling through the dense elemental forest, the fresh air entered his lungs, making him feel comfortable. Dustless gave a rare smile and said, "This is all because you told me how to sign a contract with an elf." "Humph. Do you think that just because I told you how to sign a contract, you can sign a contract with an elf as you please? Signing a contract with an elf is Witch G's privilege. A lewd beast like you who peeps at other people's baths can only sign a contract if that elf is blind." Claire bluntly attacked. Then she asked, "Since this is your first time here, how do you know that there are ruins where the elf's holy sword is sealed?" "Well," Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly. This question was really not easy to answer. After all, it was the ability of a transmigrator to foresight. He turned around and saw Claire's face full of doubts. If he didn't answer, she might harass Dustless the whole way. "This is very simple. I'm a big genius. I can tell what people are thinking with a glance. You were bathing just now. No, you were cleaning yourself, right? Your purpose was to sign a contract with the elf here, right?" Dustless casually evaded. "You even know this." Claire was angry and shocked. She was angry that Dustless had casually tricked her and seen through her thoughts with a glance. That was the ability of a god. How could a mere mortal do it? And she was surprised that Dustless had guessed correctly. She had been bathing just now to sign a contract with the elf. "That's why I'm a big genius. That elf is mine," Dustless replied with a smile. What a narcissistic guy. Claire's jade-like nose wrinkled slightly. It was rare for her to continue asking. In any case, even if she continued asking, Dustless would just be fooling her. "Oh, right." As if remembering something, Claire's footsteps suddenly stopped. She looked seriously at Dustless and asked, "You know my name but you haven't said your own." "Dustless." Glancing at Claire, Dustless answered calmly. Dustless. What a strange name. After chewing it lightly, Claire truly felt that this name was strange. It was like Dustless himself, incompatible with this world. About half an hour later, Dustless and Claire finally arrived at a dilapidated ruin. There were broken walls, messy stones, and weeds everywhere. The entrance to the ruins was sealed by a transparent barrier. "You're so eager to become an elf envoy. What's your goal?" Walking in front of the barrier, Claire turned her head to look at Dustless. Her rolling eyes were filled with vigilance. "If I say I want to destroy the world, are you not going to let me in?" "Sigh, little girl, you're good at everything, but you're too suspicious." Dustless sighed. "Humph, you want to destroy the world? Do you think you're the reincarnation of a demon king?" Claire was rather disdainful. Shortly after, a white light appeared from her white hand and she waved it lightly at the barrier. "Pa!" A crisp sound suddenly sounded. Immediately after, the barrier quickly collapsed and the entrance to the ruins was exposed. A rather ancient aura greeted them. It seemed that this ruin had been around for quite some time. Signing a contract with an elf is a very dangerous thing. "If anything happens, I won't save you." Claire glanced at Dustless and reminded him seriously. "I should be the one saying this to you. Don't forget that you were my captive before." Dustless rolled his eyes as he walked. This little girl would rather die than admit defeat. Claire's little face was slightly red. Shortly after, she looked at Dustless angrily and retorted with a red face, "That's because I was careless." "Stubborn brat. Even if I defeat you again, you still won't admit defeat." Dustless shook his head. He was too lazy to pay attention to Claire. He raised his gaze slightly and looked ahead. A long sword was firmly inserted into the square stone tablet. "Is this the holy sword?" Claire was delighted. A rare smile appeared on her pretty face as if she had seen a huge treasure. Her eyes were as dazzling as the lights. "According to our previous promise, you can sign a contract with it first." Dustless suddenly stopped 5 or 6 meters away from the stone sword and motioned for Claire to go first. "Are you sure? There's only one elf." A strange expression flashed across Claire's pretty face. She looked straight at Dustless with an inexplicable meaning. Dustless didn't say anything. He just stood in place and closed his eyes to rest. "Dustless, is it? This young lady approves of you. I didn't expect you to keep your promise." A slight ripple appeared in Claire's eyes. She was quite surprised. She actually thought that Dustless would take the opportunity to go back on his word and sign a contract with the elf first. In the end, it's just an elf. It's not worth it for me to go back on my word and betray my character. Actually, I wanted to become an elf envoy on a whim. It would be best if I could become one, but if not, then so be it. Didn't I tell you before? With my strength, becoming an elf envoy is just icing on the cake. It won't have any fundamental effect. On the other hand, if you can really sign a contract with it, it will be fate. Everything depends on fate. If it's yours, no one can snatch it away. If it's not yours, you can't force it either. Dustless spoke frankly with assurance. His deep eyes were as calm as water, aloof from worldly affairs. In all fairness, an elf envoy might be good, but the increase in strength was negligible. It might not even have the slightest effect. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2176. TSK. I didn't expect a perverted beast like you to have such an opinion. Public morals are really degenerating these days. Krell curled her lips. Although her face was full of disdain, she looked at Dustless in amazement. Obviously, she also thought that Dustless's words made sense. Everything depended on fate. If it was yours, you would always be able to obtain it. If it wasn't yours, you would never be able to obtain it even if you racked your brains. Whew! Taking a deep breath, Krell walked to the front of the stone sword. Her eyes shone brightly as she started chanting an ancient and cryptic incantation. Boom boom boom. At the same time, a powerful shockwave suddenly erupted from Krell's body. The shockwave of energy hit his face like a slap. This is the divine might that Krell mentioned, right? It seems very powerful. I wonder what mine is like. Krell's cold eyes suddenly turned into an expectant smile. Coming into contact with a new ability, even Dustless couldn't help but smile. He was full of hope for the future. Boom boom boom. Krell's aura grew stronger and stronger. A strong wind spread out, and even the rocks on the wall were peeled off layer by layer and fell to the ground. Come out. Looking down at the long sword in the stone, Krell's seemingly weak hand finally tightly grasped the ancient sword hilt. Her body's strength reached its limit in an instant. Clang 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 clang. The long sword that was stuck in the stone trembled slightly. At this moment, the deathly still sword body shone brightly as if it had come to life. Then, under Dustless's astonished gaze, the long sword was pulled out of the sheath. Ha ha ha, I pulled it out. Krell was overjoyed. Looking at the shining sharp blade in her hand, a surprised smile appeared on her small face. She showed off to Dustless like a child. Perverted beast, you're destined to have no fate with it. As long as you're happy, Dustless said indifferently. Boom boom boom. At the same time, a dazzling white light suddenly flashed at the top of the cave. In an instant, it was as dazzling as the sun. Dustless and Krell both subconsciously closed their eyes. Ka ka ka. Immediately after, a shattering sound suddenly rang out. Claire suddenly realized that the holy sword in her hand had disappeared. She hurriedly opened her eyes and saw that the divine sword that seemed to be able to cut through iron like mud had actually disappeared. The sword's body was also gradually shattering like particles. What is going on? Claire's eyes widened. Even though she didn't know why the sword had collapsed, she understood that her contract with the elf had failed. Look at that sword on your head. It's full of spirituality. It should be the true holy sword. Dustless' voice suddenly sounded, attracting Claire's attention. She raised her head to look at the sky above her head. A sparkling translucent holy sword inlaid with dazzling gems invaded her eyes. What a beautiful holy sword. After being stunned for a while, Dustless didn't make any superfluous comments. He only felt that this sword was very exquisite. Buzz buzz buzz. However, this sentence seemed to have angered the holy sword. The sword's body suddenly erupted with a dazzling light. Its aura became even sharper, and there was a vague sword intent wreaking havoc. Even from a dozen meters away, one's skin was faintly aching. What a willful holy sword. Dustless shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He didn't expect that a single sentence would actually make this deceptive holy sword hostile to him. The meaning it revealed was as if it was saying, I'm not only beautiful, I'm also very powerful.
What? Dustless suddenly looked at Claire.
Seeing that the ambition in the depths of her eyes hadn't been extinguished, he asked with a smile, "You still don't plan to give up?
If you continue to fight with it, your life may be in danger. This holy sword hasn't truly awakened yet. If it completely awakens, I don't think I need to tell you the consequences."
TCH, you're clearly just an outsider who doesn't even know how to sign a contract with a spirit. You still want to lecture me?
Claire raised her head and looked at Dustless with dissatisfaction. She picked up her weapon again, the flame whip. Her contracted spirit, Scarlet, also looked at the holy sword floating in the sky with burning eyes. Her meaning was self-evident. Stubborn. Seeing this, Dustless directly found a place to sit down and watch this scene indifferently. Even though Claire's courage was outstanding, as a transmigrator, Dustless understood that in the end, this stubborn little girl had failed. The holy sword had a spirit. Since it had rejected Claire the first time, no matter how hard it tried, it wouldn't have the slightest effect.
Then let me properly train you, Scarlet. The whip in her hand was covered in a layer of blazing flames.
Claire and her contracted spirit, Scarlet, attacked the holy sword at the same time. Clang, clang, clang. When the whip hit the holy sword, it would emit a series of loud and clear rumbles. Scarlet also soared into the air, his entire body covered in flames. In an instant, the originally docile Scarlet suddenly became wild. He opened his small fangs and bit the holy sword. However, all of this was of little use. The holy sword was completely fine. Its surface still emitted a dazzling gem aura. Claire's attack appeared very weak. Inside the cave, a human, a cat, and a holy sword were engaged in an intense confrontation. Hum, hum, hum. After a few minutes, the holy sword seemed to be enraged. The surface of the sword flashed with a dazzling light again. The sword floating in the air also suddenly adjusted its direction.
The cold light radiating from the tip of the sword was aimed at Scarlet and suddenly pierced out.
"Scarlet, be careful."
Seeing this, Claire was greatly alarmed. She knew that the sealed spirit had been provoked repeatedly and was truly enraged.
Poochie. However, even though Claire reminded him that it was Scarlet, it was useless. The holy sword was too fast and pierced through Scarlet in an instant. "Awoo!" Scarlet let out a blood-curdling scream. Soon after, his body collapsed, turning into raindrops of flames that drifted away. After eliminating Scarlet, the holy sword adjusted its square shape again. The tip of the sword was aimed at Claire. Without hesitation, it suddenly pierced forward, wanting to pierce through her entire body. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.